What's up, everybody? This is Karak with ACG, and I'm here with Mike Williams, Victor Magnuson, and Derek Bradley. We are going to be doing a Developers React to 2018 kind of video here. I want to say thanks to everybody who's shown up live to watch this. It'll go up on YouTube in 24 hours. That's the rule for somebody who's affiliated, so most likely I'll just do it anyway and upload it early and hopefully get banned. We are going to be talking about positive news, negative news. We've taken some questions from patrons as well. So if you have any questions, throw them into Twitch. I would love for everybody to give these guys a resounding hand of applause because we had some time zone issues. Four different time zones. We've got Derek, who's up incredibly late, myself incredibly early. We nailed Victor. I think we got his just exactly right. And Mike, we probably interrupted his Friday at work, unfortunately, but he was nice enough to join us, and I definitely.
Oh no, I'm off. I'm off.
Free, okay,
man. So you had me wake up early. This is when I normally begin.
Oh, okay. So basically, you're saying did I interrupt like your season watch of Lost or something like that, or would you have been totally asleep right now?
I would have today. Yeah, I would have still been asleep.
Oh shit! Sorry,
I've been sleeping until like noon during the break. So.
Oh, dude, perfect. It's so nice to wake up without an alarm, where you just roll out of bed when you want to. It is very few feelings so good as that. Swing shift. That's why a lot of people like swing shift. You just roll out of bed and you go to work whenever. This is very cool.
Pretty much.
So we have a bunch of stuff, like I said, to talk about. A bunch of most of it's going to be positive. We've got enough negative. I can cover those in my own personal videos. So can Mike. It's really just looking back at 2018. This is something that I've said, and first I want to ask if everybody agrees or if there's a year that they remember, but I've talked about this in videos. I personally think it's probably the best year in video games I can remember in a long time. Some of that driven by Sony exclusives, some of it driven by large companies finally getting things perfect, like a Forza Horizon 4, which is just one of those racing games that you're like, how's a company later going to end up topping this? So first, Derek, who just released Ashen on, what day was that released on?
I think it was the 7th of December.
Yeah, which would happen to be one day after the Game Awards, but we'll get to my bitching about that later.
In that case, it was the 6th.
Oh yeah, true. But overall, like 2018 as a spectacular game release year, would you agree? Is there a game year you remember from your past as a young kid where you felt that it was even better than this? Or do you not agree?
No, I completely agree. I think like sometimes, like the hype from E3s and all that kind of stuff, it kind of sells like the year is going to be bigger than it is, but somehow like it overshot all of the hype that I kind of expected for this year. Yeah, pretty amazing.
Were there any standouts? Just the title, you don't have to, get into in-depth gameplay or anything, but were there any standouts that you saw, even if you just saw a trailer, saw people playing it?
As in games, definitely Forza Horizon as well. I'd probably reiterate that was just because I don't play car games. Like I'm just not actually a car person, and like I played it and was hooked. So it kind of got me. Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Victor? I totally agree with that. I'm not at all a car person either. My son is 6 and he loves cars. But we are playing. I got him. He had his birthday 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. So I got him Forza Horizon 4 for his birthday, and we've been playing it a lot, and it's fantastic. And I loved 3 as well. It was just amazing. Those games are really good at getting people that maybe like me I can't really get into Gran Turismo too much anymore. Like it's too much work for me.
Yeah.
But Forza Horizon it's perfect. It's just like it's so nice and it just sort of encourages you to play, and there's enough sort of simulation for it to feel really challenging, but really nice also. So I really like
I am a car person, and I Forza Horizon is and I like that they are down to the every other year, so I can always look forward to a Forza Horizon. Every other year, I'm like, yes, it's time. Let's do this.
Yeah.
And I think that was my number 2 game of the year. It's just every entry is fantastic, and we lost a whole bunch of arcade racer developers in the last generation. Yeah. So this is like one of my smaller bastions every other year. So,
Victor, 2018. I know as a developer you don't get a chance to maybe play as many games as you would want, but
No.
would you say 2018 is one of the best years? Again, so anybody listening, we're ignoring the issues. We'll talk
No.
about those, but just when it comes to what we got from a lot of these titles.
Yeah, it's been pretty fantastic. I mean, we've had at least 3 that I can think of right now that are completely stand out. Like I think like God of War, Spider-Man, and Red Dead 2 is just all those 3 games are amazing, and they like really wow you in ways that you like. How is this possible? Like how much time must this have taken, and the effort and the animations, and like it's just like, oh, you sort of as a developer you go like, oh god, how are we gonna is this the fidelity we have to get to now? Like what are we ever gonna
That's when you wake up and give cool the fist pump, and then over here you're like, damn.
Yeah,
because you know
like one example is I was playing Red Dead, and I went to the theater to see a show, and there's like this first is stand up, and then there's this band playing a jazz song, and they've mocapped the drums like perfectly.
Oh, right.
Like, who does that? Like, why would you mocap the drums exactly like they are? Like that would never fly at my company, sadly. But like, it's fantastic. That type of detail is just insane.
What about you, Mike? 2018 versus prior years you've covered.
So we actually had this discussion in our Slack, and officially on the site it was that 2018 was great, but wasn't as good as 2017. And the sort of switch over there is 2017 for some other people on the team was more of a like transformational year.
Okay.
Like there were games dropping that will sort of affect things into the future, whereas 2018 was more of an execution year. Like the games that came out that were great weren't necessarily games that will change how games are going, but they were executed really well.
Right.
And I at least thought there was a ton of variety. Like we normally do personal top 10 lists. I did a top 20 because there were so many other games that I wanted to, like small games. So my number 1 was Hitman 2. But then there are, other games like God of War, Spider-Man. I also put Overcooked 2 on my list. The Messenger, Battletech. Like there were just a number of different games, 2 Point Hospital, across a ton of genres. Like, so I ended up having, while I was off, sort of this paradox of choice, because I don't get to play games that aren't review games. Since I'm the reviews editor, I have to keep playing and move on. So then the break came, and then I'm looking at all these other games in my backlog, which goes back about 2 years at this point. And I'm like, I don't know what to play. I really didn't know what to play. So I ended up playing Ghost Recon Wildlands, which was from last year, which I wouldn't say it's the most amazing game, but it is a good game for me to just sort of zone out to. Like I can play it in the background. But it was one of those years where there were just a ton of games, and it never stopped. Like there was always something. Even you guys with Ashen right at the end, I'm like, good. It's time to start doing my wrap up. Where's this game coming from? Why now?
Yeah. It's I think Below is another one, even though I just call it like binoculars, because that's what you need to see your little character. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah.
Below. Yeah. Oh, thank you very much for subscribing, bro. But Below really hurt me as a game reviewer, because I got that and I was excited for Below, excited for Ashen, jumped into these. I was playing Ashen, got my butt just stomped at some guy. I was with a friend, and we both ended up basically dying. And so I was like, well, let me check out Below. So I loaded up, and that cutscene at starting of Below is about, it felt like about 85 minutes. I think it was more like 4. But you're sitting there going, this boat's moving fucking nowhere. Nothing's happening. And the boat's this big, and you're like, it's going to zoom in, right? And it does, by about 3 pixels. And then your little tiny itsy bitsy baby dude gets out, and you're all, oh no. And I have a huge monitor, 4K 1080p. It didn't matter. I could barely see it. That was really disappointing to me. But it was another title that released, there or after the Game Awards, and didn't, I would have loved to have seen that get more support. I would have loved to have seen people look at it, because just because I have an issue and I have 40-year-old eyes doesn't mean somebody else didn't. And didn't really enjoy it. There are so many games. There's so many indie titles. It was a little weird to see, and this is not me picking on the Video Game Awards. This is any awards, but it was weird for me to see not as many indie games as I thought would be in some people's lists. Mike got Overcooked, which I think is great. But you saw a lot of times where it was like, what was it, Catherine? Is that the game?
Oh, Celeste.
Celeste. I'm sorry. I always mix those two up. Celeste. It's like Red Dead, Spider-Man, God of War. Oh, and Celeste. See ya. Thanks. It was sort of like that pat on the back kind of moment. And I was like, damn it. Some of these indies were some of the best games, some of the most enjoyable games.
Celeste almost took our number one for the site.
No shit.
It was real close, but Kat fought hard for Red Dead 2, which I didn't expect. I was like, everyone should play Red Dead 2. It's going to be great. And Kat was really like, nah, it's not going to be good. And then she started playing it after I reviewed it. And then by the end of the year, she was like, no, Red Dead 2 needs that number one spot. I was like, I would go with Celeste, but she fought very hard. And so Red Dead took our number one. I think Celeste was our number 2 spot.
So we're not mentioning a game here that we haven't yet, at least, that I think absolutely deserves mention. And here's probably why 2018 to me is the best game year that I would say the BioWare Bungie bizarre moments of Microsoft were pretty incredible there. They had a couple years where you were just like, they were releasing an amazing game for a specific console. But the fact that Assassin's Creed Odyssey is in anybody's Game of the Year list is stunning to me. It's fantastic. It shows a growth from a company, and it's so fucking fun as a game. Like, as a game, there's a lot of games that are experiences. In fact, Red Dead, and it's so funny because when Victor mentioned Red Dead, I actually got chills because I remembered a particular animation that I looked at for like 45 minutes, just going like, what the fuck? What are they doing? But when it comes to a game, the fact that we're able to discuss an AC game as a game of the year with others and not have people look at you and point and be like, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about, is awesome. So
I actually like the Origins more, I have to say.
So okay.
But I played Origins this year, so it's in my games of this year. Yeah, because I got it for Christmas last year, and then I played it this year. I hadn't had time to play it before, so I played it like in the spring sometime. So for me, it was I was a little bit too close to have just finished Origins. I played a lot of Origins, so when I got into Odyssey, I was like, yeah, I've sort of done this before. It was I really liked it, but I was like, and then also I just played Spider-Man, and I knew I was going to play Red Dead.
Little fatigue.
So and they were in. Yes, I had the open world fatigue was sort of setting in, and I was like, I can't really go to another icon on the map and do something. So but I do appreciate that it was really they've sort of gone full bananas and just don't give a shit anymore, and it's just about having fun, and like I really like that part. But I think I like the story more in Origins, but that might be because I'm a dad and it really sort of resonated well with
that would
father son's thing. Yeah.
And also the fact that in Odyssey the story just revolves you humping everything.
Yeah, and I had a problem with the story in Odyssey because you were sort of I didn't really like I didn't feel good about killing people in Odyssey because they were not sort of bad people. They were just either like Spartans or Greek, and it just felt sort of, or Athens, and it just felt like, why am I murdering this whole like fort full of just random Spartans? They haven't really done anything, just to sort of fill up a meter so I can start a war and pick the other side and murder them. Yeah, that part sort of didn't really resonate with me. But I guess if you sort of give it them, it was pretty good.
Yeah, Derek,
to wait in there. Yeah, I'd say Assassin's Creed is probably my number 2 of the year. Just another one I was surprised by. I honestly never got into any of the other Assassin's Creeds. There's probably like something that I find like separates people is there's people who like the kind of modern day stuff, and there's other people that just makes them disengage as they get pulled out of the sort of whatever the past life was and go into that, like, it was like you're running around offices doing things, all that kind of stuff, disengages people. I think I was one of those people. Like, I just wanted to like be a pirate or like, you know, be an assassin in the past at some point. And I just tried it out, and like it was honestly a very similar experience to Forza, where I was just like, wow, this isn't a game that I normally like, and it was absolutely amazing. I probably should play Origins as well. I think the reason I just haven't played Origins was that it was something that it was just something I didn't even think to play, and like,
yeah.
I wonder how it is to go from playing Odyssey first and then going to Origins. If it feels sort of, because Origins now was more sort of, it wasn't as, it was more like held back. They were a little bit more strict with the rules, and you weren't going full like Superman style. Like in Odyssey, they just like, okay, we don't really care anymore. You can fly, you can like teleport and do stuff. You couldn't really do that type of stuff in Origins. I don't know, like going back, if you would feel like it's not as much fun. Like by going from Origins to Odyssey, it felt just like an evolution. I don't know how that would work. It would be interesting to hear.
Yeah, I mean, I think the ancient Egypt stuff would be pretty appealing.
That was really nice. That was really nice.
I think when you look at so whenever I mention art, Victor's usually like when we're talking about something, I usually see him nodding or something. So I'm assuming that's something he pays attention to, the animation, stuff like that. I think with Origins, it's easier to be wowed because it's the pyramids, exactly. Right? And you're fucking at some point you're snowboarding, sandboarding down the side of the pyramid, and you're like, yeah, I'm actually doing that right now. Like, it's pretty fucking awesome. And you got to play it after some of the bugs, because I had issues mostly with the bugs, and mostly because and as not a father, you know, I'm not going to pass down my flawed genes to some poor child. I'm playing Origins, and Bayak, or as I call him, Borak, I just could not stand listening to him ever. So for some reason I was popped out of that story. But the location was fucking phenomenal. When you get on the Nile in Origins, and you're just and the attention to detail, like they even showed the floodplains. If you go to the edges, you can see where some docks are underwater, where they build them when, you know, it retreated. And then some are in mid, and they're there in the wet mud making fucking bricks. And you can watch a character make a brick, put it in a stack, a person grab the stack, walk the stack over to a mill and drop it down. And then, you know, little things that a lot of companies don't have the resources maybe, or the eye for detail.
One thing about that, have you seen the video of somebody that was following people in Red Dead?
Yes, I have.
That was insane. Like the person like going to first starts out in the bar, like drinks a couple of beers, then goes to his work. He works at the sheep farm, like carries around stuff, works at the farm, goes back to the bar. Like he has a full schedule. Like you can actually like follow these people. And, it's insane.
It reminds
that somebody has like taken the time to like actually make every person's sort of day make sense. Is just insane. And also like, it speaks to the volume of people that have worked on the game and the time they put into the game, which is like insane. But yeah,
and especially with the Assassin's Creed, I've been a long-term Assassin's Creed fan, so I've pretty much liked all of them. But I've, over the course of work, have talked to many of the people behind the game, and I believe it was Syndicate was the last one where I talked to the historian, and they like literally had like this very nice older lady who had just thoroughly researched London back in the day and making sure all of their signs were correct, making sure the tavern songs were correct. And it's interesting because a lot of players will just like blow right past most of that stuff. Or with Origins, they had a guy who was like, yeah, no, here's basically what the pyramid should be looking like. And I think that year that Origins came out, they found
like an
extra room, and the historian guy was like, yeah, I thought that room would probably be there, so we put it in the game. But I'm glad I got proven right as a historian. So it was a lot of fun. Even if I'd say a lot of players treat that as sort of set dressing and don't really think about it all too much.
You know when they do?
No, but the cool thing is that you actually sort of you get like a history lesson without even thinking about it. Even though it's really sort of quasi religion, like true, but there is stuff in there that is actually real, and you can so when you like hear about it or read about it in some other way, you're like, oh, I know about this. I've been there. I've been to that pyramid, and like, oh, that's that guy. Yeah. So I think it's pretty good actually as a educational tool. Like you can't like use it as your only way, but it's like it's
A primer,
for
almost?
people like a primer to like get interested and then sort of finding out the real thing. It's probably pretty good.
Yeah,
I mean,
and they had a
it's like
discovery tour.
Go ahead, Derek.
Okay.
I mean, definitely for myself, going to ancient Greece, like you just never do that. But getting into those games, like you feel like you're actually walking around those places, and they've scanned a bunch of things too, right? Like they do a bunch of scans to make sure things are like super accurate. Yeah, it was amazing, and I think exactly what you guys were saying too, like where Red Dead has this like detail, there's like the fog and like those particular like planes with the rocks and whatever, like the just the lighting and everything just looks perfect, right? There's like a level of perfection, whereas like Assassin's Creed are like this magnitude where it feels like you're moving through a whole bunch of islands and there's like these big cities all over the place. It's just like staggering, I suppose, being able to go to those ancient lands and like I don't know, because I've read about a lot of that stuff in the past, but there's just like this whole other dimension of like a virtual world that I've never been able to visit before. And I think that's really interesting. Probably for kids to learn from is interesting too. But like, I mean, for adults to also kind of like have that extra dimension kind of like slotted in is, pretty cool.
Yeah. I definitely learned by killing, which just means just kill, move forward the game. So somebody a couple days ago was like, yeah, man, Red Dead, you're not supposed to be the bad guy. And I'm like, dude, I was the bad guy, worked fine. But the story necessarily didn't, resonate really well. And I think with Assassin's Creed Odyssey, you could say the same thing, that there were some issues there with the story. It was the first time they attempted, funny enough, that Mike mentioned Syndicate. This is the devs who did that. And they had Evie and Jacob. And now here they have, what's her name? Cassandra and Alexios. Yeah. And it's funny because everybody that I talked to, most people I talked to, were playing Cassandra. And I was like, for my first playthrough, I'm going to play Alexios because he always looked like some swarmy asshole. Like, I loved him. I like those kind of characters. He's just like, how you doing? He was Joey from Friends with a sword. So he goes out there, and I'm playing it, and I'm like, man, I thought he sort of nailed it in this goofy, dorky way. And then I played Cassandra. She nailed it in other ways. But I was a little disappointed, I will admit, when they were like, hey, you can have female-male protagonists, but then every single like sex scene and sex moment was identical. I was sort of hoping, they didn't really say, here's why you should choose one or the other. And I know that Ubisoft has said they're not going to. This is their big push for like, it's your story. But I was wishing there was a moment where I felt like I was Cassandra, if that makes sense. Like there was a payoff for picking her. There's a later part of the game I don't want to spoil for anybody, but you know they're twins already. But when some of that shit rolls out, I thought that was cool. I wish there was there had maybe been a little bit more of a difference in how that was rolled out depending on who you chose. But my question is for people who played, did you play it correctly and play Alexios, or did you play it incorrectly and play Cassandra? Just joking.
Cassandra.
Cassandra.
I was Cassandra as well.
What
Yeah.
Really? Okay, Mike.
Yeah.
Mike, come on.
Well, okay, so I played Alexios.
Okay.
But technically,
Here
according
we go.
To the novel, yes. See, I'm the. If any developer or publisher out there wonders who reads all of the novels and comics and extra stuff, I'm that guy.
You're that guy.
I'm definitely that guy. Cassandra is technically supposed to be the correct one.
Yeah, she's canon.
All right.
Yeah, she is the older sister, and Alexios is the baby that gets thrown off a cliff at the thing. So technically, but I picked Alexios.
How have they done that if you play the Alexios? Like, is it just switched?
Yeah,
it's just switched. Like they literally, it doesn't matter which one is first. Whichever one you pick is always the older sibling, and then the other one is the baby. And it doesn't particularly what Karak was saying. Like, it doesn't matter. Ubisoft does not care which one you pick.
Yeah.
So it's same as Mass Effect Andromeda, where like whatever one you don't pick is the other one is the thing happens to them, like the bad thing. Mm-hmm. So I pick Alexios, but that tends to be because when I play RPGs, I tend to pick a character as close to myself as possible.
Right.
So if I can make a character, my character always looks like me. Whereas I know a lot of people who play in the opposite direction. Like they're like, I want to experience something else. So
speaking of all this, including other games, obviously, but for me, I felt that this was sort of the year of like where quests and the way quests were done. There were some really cool moments. So for me, the sex scene where you sex up the older lady for 3 solid days in Odyssey was, dude, I mean, I was sitting there and I'm by myself, so I'm sure if somebody recorded me, I looked like a cackling fool. But I'm laughing my ass off, just going like, what the they're doing a time lapse. They're like, and that's Ubisoft for you. They're like, if we're gonna do something like this, then we're gonna bring the humor out, which I actually liked. But Spider-Man had some really good missions. Don't want to spoil it for some people. A lot of these games are new. Witcher 3 in the past was known for some of its mission, the Bloody Baron mission, which one of the few characters in a game that made me want to kill them in real life, like find that person, be like, I gotta end you. I like those things. Was there any amazing side mission or main mission? Red Dead, even in Ashen, because I know Victor's playing Ashen right now, and Derek, of course, made it, and Mike's playing Ashen, I think. So
I'm definitely playing Ashen.
Any games, any quests that you guys go, that was a standout moment. Oh, whoops, we lost somebody. They'll pop back up.
Mike.
There we go, and back up. So was there any standout moments that you guys had for a mission?
Trying to think of one. I know there is stuff, just can't think of it right now.
Do you pay attention to? I guess that brings the question. Do you? I mean, and this is going to sound bad, but do you pay attention very much to the missions and exactly what's going on, or are you more of a I need to kill this guy because it's $1,000?
It depends on the game. Depends on the game. Like Assassin's Creed, I play very much like that, just like go for the reward.
Right.
What I really appreciated and liked with Red Dead, that was like, especially going directly from Assassin's Creed to Red Dead, was that you couldn't play it that way. Like if you played Red Dead like you play Assassin's Creed, which is basically run around like a crazy person, kill everyone you see, pick up the loot as fast as you can, it was terrible. And it just you were gonna have a really bad time because you were like, it takes a long time to loot and like get out on the horse and stuff. But if you just gave that up and just relaxed and just, okay, I'm gonna do one mission tonight, I'm gonna take it really slow, and I'm gonna go into town and I'm gonna ride slowly when I'm in town. I'm gonna jump off my horse, put it like, I'm gonna tie it nicely to wherever, like thatch it and stuff like that, and then go slowly into the bar and stuff to have a drink. If you started playing it that way, it's really sort of clicked with me and it felt fantastic, and I really started appreciating it. But in the start, I was playing it like I play Assassin's Creed, which is like kill everything, run really fast, go to the like quest icon, like click as fast as I can. Like you can't do that in Red Dead, and I really like that they've sort of. I think it's a really brave game. I can imagine like 100 million discussions during the development of Red Dead, where people were like, okay, we have to remove this animation. We have to like clicking on the horse. You have to get up instantly. Like looting a dead person has to go like that. We can't wait for the animation and turning around and stuff like that. And somebody had like the balls to say, no, we're gonna go like this. It's gonna be we're gonna be animation driven. We're gonna wait for the animations. If you ride fast in town, you're gonna hit somebody, and they're gonna call the cops, and you're gonna get killed, and it's gonna be really annoying. And we're gonna be a really annoying and frustrating game. But when people sort of accept that and start playing it that way, they're gonna really like it. And I think for me at least, it really, really worked. Like when I started playing it as it is intended, it really, really started working for me, and I really, really started liking it. But there must have been like so many discussions with people saying like, oh no, you can't have it like this. This is super frustrating, and like because we have that type of discussions making games all the time. Like small frustrations, people like want to take away all the frustrations in the game because they feel, especially when you're developing it, because you're playing the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. So like something that it feels sort of frustrating, they're like, oh, you have to remove this. And sometimes it's really good to have frustration because it's sort of it adds some weight to what you're doing. Like if it's too easy, you don't care. It's like, I don't care. Like so, like picking up loot in Assassin's Creed, you don't really care. And in that game, it works. But you're just like looting everything you can see. You don't even care. You don't even look what you're getting. It's like, and then 2 hours later, I got this. I
have a
noticed that I
mace
got
that's
this
5
weapon,
levels higher. Yeah.
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 So I think that was pretty cool.
One of the things. Go ahead.
You go first. I'll.
Okay. Yeah, one of the things I noted is so like Odyssey was out, and then people were, I guess, sort of not down on it, but they were like, okay, I understand what this type of Assassin's Creed is. And then Red Dead came out, and one of the things I always think is interesting is like you can launch and release a game, but there's also, you have to think about the context your game is released into, because that changes how people see it. And after Red Dead 2 came out, it was kind of interesting, because if you didn't like what Red Dead 2 was putting down, if you didn't like that sort of soak in the experience, live it, then Assassin's Creed Odyssey suddenly became a better game for you. Because they were the exact opposite in terms of contrast. And if you didn't like what Odyssey was doing, then Red Dead 2 was the game that you really wanted to go with. And I always think about that, because like I understand you guys, when you're launching games, like you're part of it is you're in it, you're trying to get the game done, you're trying to get the game released. But when we get them, there's always that context. Like the other games that we've played recently are the games that we're playing right now, in addition to that, in addition to a specific game. So like things can change depending on what else is out there.
Yeah, definitely.
What, Derek, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I would actually completely agree with that. I found them to be like palate cleansers for each other. Probably let me stay in the world a little bit longer and get like less fatigued by being able to play each of them. My mission I was thinking about, though, probably goes in a bit of a different direction. It was like literally the stunt missions in Horizon were insane. Like just like jet planes flying over you, somehow choreographed that they work just as you're going there doing this thing, jumping through a windmill. Just and I mean, I guess the reason I bring that up is I feel like Horizon is the perfect execution of open world missions, like open world gameplay. It feels like, say like in The Witcher, how it's amazing to just ride around on the horse, or even in Red Dead, it's amazing to ride around on the horse. Like Forza's only got the horse, and that's like all they do, and yet they've set up these missions. And you get like so involved in them, and the fireworks that go on around you, which is why I'd point out the specifically the stunt missions in Forza are just absolutely like mind-boggling. I thought those are really cool, and just orchestrated so well.
Red Dead to me should just be called Red Dead Let It Happen, and not Red Dead Redemption 2. Because to be honest, if you force that thing, as Victor said, it's going to be the most uncomfortable fucking experience of your life. And it's just like Forza 4's terrible idea of a prologue. Sorry, devs. That's that prologue in Forza 4 Horizon made me I've rarely wanted to karate chop a fucking console in half as much as I did. I'm like, I just want to race, please. But once you sit back and you look at what they're trying to do, in a weird way, Red Dead is much like Forza 4 in how the way they're trying to deliver things and the freedom in which they're giving you these things. Because Spider-Man, another amazing game, there's not a lot of freedom there. That's a story contained with it's got your cornerstones and you sort of know where you're going. But with Forza, some of that stuff was amazing. And it's funny that you guys are like, yeah, I'm not a racer, but I liked Forza. I'm not a racer. Almost everybody I talk to says that exact thing. They're like, I never thought I'd get into a racer, but for example, they'd watch a review and they'd see drive through the water in the summer, and then in the winter it's frozen. And it was mind-numbing. You could see people just going like, wait, what? That changes? And they wanted it real time. That's probably a little too much to ask for these consoles or even a PC at this time. But just amazing overall games and quests. When it comes to Spider-Man, I want to talk about that in particular. Who's finished that or played it? Okay.
I finished all of it, even the DLC.
Even the DLC. All right. Well, we'll start with Victor first. Understanding Spider-Man not being, like those others as much. What did you think of it overall as a superhero game and just as a game overall? Did you enjoy it overall, or were there some issues?
I really enjoyed it. I think like what they've done really well, which is something that open world games needs to nail, is just it's so much fun just moving around, like doing nothing. Is you can just zip around in the city for like 10-15 minutes and have a really, really good time. So just like the basic thing that you're going to do all the time in the game is executed perfectly, and it's just so much fun. So that's like, I think that is sort of like a game that sort of did that before really well was like the old GTAs. I think did that, like GTA 3. It was so much fun to just ride around. Like I think I spent like probably 50% of the time playing that game just riding around doing nothing and just hitting cars and jumping and doing stupid stuff. Like that is, if you nail like sort of the thing that you're going to be doing the most in the game, which is in Spider-Man is swinging around, which it's insane how well it feels and how well it works, and how natural it feels, and how you almost never fuck up, which you should do all the time, but you just, okay, I want to go over there, chip, 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 and you're there, and like it's insane. That I think was the absolute sort of mind-boggling thing about that game. Like how they nailed being Spider-Man and like swinging around in the world was so much fun that it was just so great. And then the surprise came for me, which that I really cared about the story, which was really good. And I really didn't think that it was going to be good. I think I didn't like all the trailers that came out before it. I felt like this doesn't sound too interesting. Like, and also like in general, like superhero games aren't that much fun. They're pretty sort of, the story is always sort of bad, but this one just felt so good, and that really surprised me with the game. I didn't think going in that I was gonna like the story, but I really did, and I really like how they like the character development of all of the characters, including like Aunt May and what's
Don't mention her.
Mary J and Miles and and all of them. It was really good. It was fantastic.
I have a question for you. You liked Mary Jane as a character?
Yeah, definitely.
Our friendship is over.
I didn't. I mean, the stealth missions with her, maybe I didn't like as much. But the last one was pretty good when you sort of got something to do. But before that, yeah, maybe that was my favorite part. But like the interaction between Spider-Man or Peter Parker and Mary Jane, I really liked.
Were you as impacted as I was? And this is probably just me not knowing what the fuck I'm talking about. But I was so impacted by the game world changing at a particular point. And there's about halfway. I don't know how far. It depends on how you play the game. Halfway through.
2/3, I think.
2/3?
2/3. I think it's the last act. There's 3 acts. Right?
Yeah, and the world changes a little bit, and it's more chaotic, and there's some graphical changes to the world, which is quite rare when you look at most games. Most games, obviously, there's probably memory constraints. There's probably all different the testing for both sides. But I remember when the cutscene fades, what have you, and you're on a perch and you look out and you're like, wait, what? And you can start seeing like fires in places. And I don't know why that impressed me so much, but it impressed me from a stance of moving. I felt that a lot of times in games, stories don't get moved forward as well as like people think you do. For example, you mentioned it, Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I'll kill a bunch of fucking people and I'll walk into the next camp and it's the same people and they're like, sup, man? I'm covered in gore of your best friend. Like, I literally am wearing his intestines. Why are you guys not mad? And it's very difficult to do that, but I think that Spider-Man did it, at least graphically, by doing that.
Yeah, but I think also in Spider-Man, it's almost a necessity, because like in Spider-Man, you are the world isn't that big. It's pretty big, but you move around really fast. So you've been in the whole space pretty quickly in the game.
I see what you're saying.
At least when you get to the third act, you've definitely been to the whole area and you've seen everything you can see. So, and like in Assassin's Creed or Red Dead, you keep moving on the map sort of. So like this is like the first part of the game, then it's the second, third, blah, blah, blah. So you move around, so you get new environments and you see new things. But in Spider-Man, you're in the same environment the whole game. So doing that switch, I think probably came out of like, what do? We need something to change. So they just made it feel like a new environment, but it's the same environment. So it's a pretty smart trick. If it's I don't know if that was the reason, but it's if it was, it would have been a pretty good way of doing it, to like sort of get it to feel fresh again, like having just to switch that thing.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Derek, you didn't get a chance to play this. Is that because you absolutely hate Spider-Man, or is it because you were just so busy?
Just shipping a game.
Shipping a game. Shipping a game. You're like, Karak, dude, I don't have time for this shit. 16 hours of programming. Did you see anything about it, Karak?
I've definitely heard a lot of people say the web slinging's insane. And I mean, yeah, completely agree. It's the thing you're doing all the time, and that like moment to moment, like really tight stuff. It's almost so frame perfect, even, or like the way you have to like be 4 or 5 steps ahead of whatever a player is going to push at any moment to get that to feel right. It just takes so much iteration, so much time. I think it's almost like I see it with animators a lot. Actually, it's almost like with other disciplines, you can kind of see their process, but with a good animation, like tons and tons of time goes into an animation, but you just kind of see this thing moving in the end. And because it's like this temporal thing, it feels like it was just there because we're almost like evolved to think, oh, someone could just run and do these things and it happens in a moment, and however they execute it is how they executed. And I think those moment to moment gameplay things are almost like understated in how much time they take to get right and how much iteration they take to get right. And there's just like this huge body of work behind those kinds of things, which produces amazing results, obviously. But I need to check out the web slinging.
Well,
yeah, it's I don't know, it's really
good. It's great. And one of the things about Spider-Man, and the reason I loved it so much, was it's also a game that you can finish the entire thing in 25 hours. Like, when I say like 25 hours, you will be done everything.
Yeah, it had a really good length to it.
Yeah, and it's perfect. Like, it doesn't waste your time. It's just like, yep, we're here, we're done. And especially like Assassin's Creed, I think I hit 80 hours before I completed it. And I hadn't even seen the entire world map. So for like Spider-Man to just be like, look, we understand, you got things to do. Here's 25 hours. We're done. We'll see you next time. Was really nice.
I agree. Perfect length to that game. I didn't do everything, but I almost did absolutely everything. And I never do that in games because I never have time. But in Spider-Man, it just felt like I had the time, and I was still really enjoying it while I was doing it. So yeah, I agree.
And you're constantly
I'm really curious.
Unlocking stuff, which is always nice. Like, you know.
And I suppose I'm really curious about those timelines, even like how the public feel about that in general, and like where they're coming from. Because for us, I mean, like you guys are obviously reviewing a whole bunch of things and looking at a whole bunch of things. So like, if you can get like a really good dramatic thing in a certain time box, you can see it and experience it and enjoy it. For us, like devs, it's like, well, we're trying to make games at the same time, and like, you know, anybody who's got like a full-time job is probably in the same position as us, where we're doing it in those times. But I guess when I was like a teenager and I'm on like summer holidays and
JRPG grind.
Yeah, I want that 80 hours then, you know, and I wonder how that's changing, or if that's maybe it's just that, you know, there's space for both.
Yeah,
well,
I hope so.
I think Mike can speak to this because he talks to a lot of his fans as well, and I know we have a huge Discord, and we had a big discussion about this, like what game, you know, what the length of the game. And there were a lot of people who were looking down the barrel of Odyssey and were like, damn, son. Like, because we were already getting to it. Mike and I talked in a thread when the reviews came up, and people were like, because remember they said it was 100 hours of story. And I did a video where I'm like, probably not. And I was right, but I wasn't off as much as I actually, like, because you hear somebody be like, 200 hours, and you're all, bitch, that's if I walked left to right like I was minesweeping an ocean layer somewhere. Like, that's not really how long your game is. But Odyssey is that
Odyssey
big.
is like 60. Odyssey is like 60 minimum.
And Spider-Man, everybody I talked to was incredibly happy with Spider-Man's the way it all just went from point to point to point, told your stories, had you do some stuff. I will admit there were some people who hated particular side missions. In fact, I think of all the games I've talked to, the gamers I've talked to, that's the game with a couple side missions that they hated the most out of all these big titles. But yeah, man, it's Spider-Man. Spider-Man does some amazing stuff. It also, I don't know about you guys, but when I play a Batman game, my Batman always looks like his parents drank a little too much when he was in the womb. I always start the game, bounce around some shit, look like a fool. I don't think I ever looked like an idiot in Spider-Man. Like, I don't, like you guys said, the animation blending, all that, it's incredible. It makes you feel like you're not invincible, but that you can do these amazing things without also making you feel overpowered.
Yeah, it's definitely the best sort of execution of the Batman combat since Batman, I would say.
Yeah.
And in some ways, I think it's better because it's more. It felt more like you were in control than it does in Batman. Like you had more options in Spider-Man. It felt more loose than Batman does. Batman is more just reacting to what's going on, while here you could be more sort of proactive and use your webs and stuff to do. You could get out of situation and get back right back into it and like to do stuff like that. So it felt more creative than Batman anyway. But still sort of the same type of combat.
I think also with Spider-Man, the ability to connect to anything upside down. So Batman, you could use the grapple, but it was only in certain spots. But with Spider-Man, the 3D element comes in, and you're like, dude, I can climb on anything, anywhere. And that changes the flexibility. You know, the game players, your mind just sort of opens up, and you're like, oh, man, I can come in underneath this thing, which I could not do in almost any other game, and take these guys out silently, which was always fun, even though it was the most... probably the loudest stealth takedowns I've ever seen in my life. But the first time you take a guy,
it was fun. It wasn't the best sort of I'm a super assassin, but it was a lot of fun taking people out.
It was. It was.
I opened every sort of combat encounter with like killing everybody I could stealth, and then there always came the other guys that you had to fight, and then you fought.
Yeah, the reinforcements.
Yeah, when you give all those guys brain damage, like you like bring them up and then hit
there
them
you go, Mike. That's the one I'm talking about.
You're just like, wow,
and you're like, he'll be fine. And then I had stated that a lot of people died in my version of Spider-Man because I was either killing them, breaking their backs, and I got a lot of flack for that. But I'm like, no, I'll stand by it as a joke, of course. Just obviously it's a video game, but fantastic stuff. It's good, even though Derek didn't get a chance to play it. It's always good when you hear that like that's being talked about by other devs, like as a premier title. Speaking of that, God of War. So did anybody expect was anybody worried about God of War changing his viewpoint, or did everybody think it was time?
I hadn't played one since God of War 2, so for me it was time.
It was time.
Because you finished the first God of War and you got a story. It's Kratos and his revenge. And then God of War 2 is, it's not, the revenge wasn't done. Let's go back and do all that again. And by that point, I was just like I know what the game is, and I don't need to necessarily see this story again. So when this one came around, I was like, okay, that's something new for Kratos.
And did it work for you, Mike? I mean, did you feel like that was, okay.
Yeah, no, it was fantastic.
Okay. What were you saying?
I really liked it. I think that's probably my game of the year. I think it's the second game ever I got a platinum achievement for.
Oh,
so that says quite a lot. Like I really enjoyed it, and I think there as well, like the time they've put into the axe combat and the axe throwing, and like it's really. I remember seeing that video about one of the devs put up a sort of a video about how all the work they put into the axe throwing.
Isn't that insane?
That was really cool. But I mean, it's not. It's not insane. That is how much work you have to put into something to make you feel good. But it was really cool to see. It was really cool if he shared it in a really good way, so you could really understand what they have done. But I really enjoyed it. I liked the story. Again, being a father, I think that really resonated with me. And I just thought it was, and it was, I really think it was a cool, if it was sort of like going from 2D Zelda to 3D Zelda. Like it still feels like God of War. The same way that Zelda always feels like Zelda, but this feels like a God of War game, but it's more of like a Assassin's Creed or that type of game. No, not Assassin's Creed. What am I thinking about? Naughty Dog.
Uncharted.
Uncharted. Yeah.
Okay.
So, but I think, but it still felt very much like Assassin, like God of War. Well, like the combat felt very much like God of War.
Gotcha. What about you, Derek? Any thoughts on God of War?
This is another one I haven't actually played. Again, I've heard a lot of, not at all. No, I mean I've watched a bunch of it, and I've heard a lot of people talking about it, and people are just like their jaws have dropped from it. Of course, like people love it, but yeah, need to get some time to play games.
As a developer, do you guys ever I mean, and kids, anybody watching, this is why you shouldn't become a developer, obviously, because we got to play cool games, and they're like, coding away. I'm just joking. As developers, do you guys ever really rue? I mean, is there ever a time where you really rue being a developer because you really want to play some of these, and because it feels to me like the backlog for you guys will never end, because you'll always be iterating or always be creating something new. Do you guys ever sort of hope for a sick day kind of thing, or like what do you do? Do you just call in? You're like, this is Victor. I don't feel good. And they can hear God of War in the background. They're like, no, we know, Victor.
I feel like I get like it depends on which stage of development I'm in. Like there's certain stages where even if I have a day off, like I just can't touch anything. Like I'm too deep.
Oh, I see. Okay.
There's other times like at the start of a project, I actually enjoy playing a lot of games, and like I do in my spare time because we haven't got down to the nitty gritty of like really iterating things and dialing things in. No, I mean I love it. I mean, it's kind of like there are some issues. I'd say the biggest issue with being developer is that you see behind the curtain. You know, all the tricks and things, all the things that are just like were magic to you once upon a time. You can see them all, but I mean, it gives you the same pleasure like an engineer would feel at like building a bridge that is like going over a bunch of stuff, and like people don't understand how it's like supported. I think it's there's definitely like a whole other layer to it where I'd be hard pressed to say that I like playing games more than developing games at this point.
Really?
Because developing is so much fun.
Yeah, one on that point is one of the things I like is like I've been doing this for long enough that I talk to developers, and Karak is the same way, but a lot of players don't realize, like you were bringing up the axe, how they actually put out a post like, here's all the iteration we did on making the axe work. Like here's everything that went into the simplest motion in the game. And I think a lot of players don't necessarily realize, and it's like I was talking with that Assassin's Creed and the historian, how much goes into developing the games. And I like when you guys get a chance to generally post-mortem talk about like, this is everything that went into like even the smallest bits, like, because once players know that, I think it allows them to change their sort of mental context at approaching the game. Because to them, like, they hit a button and the character swings an axe, and that was easy. But they don't realize how many man hours, how many multiple people probably went into making that work.
Yeah, like adding... Derek, go first.
I guess it's one of those things where some things kind of cross throughout the industry, and there's kind of shared knowledge with certain things. But I think there's a bunch of things out there where to build those things almost is like company genetics or company culture, where you build it over like multiple games, or stuff that we developed in the first 6 months of working on Ashen. Like we just take for granted absolutely after that. It's just this like base you work on top of, and you almost forget that it exists. And it's so weird because it becomes almost genetic to a company. Like everybody. And you only realize it when a new person joins, and then suddenly they're like, "What's
up, everybody?
All of this that you guys are talking about?" And then you have to explain it, and you're like, them asking those questions is actually probably the most like illuminating thing that we have to show us where we've come in that particular project. But and I guess for developers in general, like there's a lot of shared stuff as well that we just kind of know because it's general development stuff that is, I suppose, not really well known by gamers, you know, which I suppose even alludes to why I was saying like I'd be hard pressed to say that I enjoy playing games more than making games at this point. You know, that whole like as like sort of like evolutionary process of a studio is like really interesting. It's like, I don't know, playing like the biggest sim you've ever played with a game studio in a lot of ways, which is pretty rewarding.
You're basically playing Game Dev Studio on your own.
Yeah.
Now that I think about it, Victor, go ahead. You were gonna add.
Yeah, but like back to what Michael said, like adding even the most simple thing will take so much more time than you, like, even we imagine. Like we say, oh, it's going to be super simple to just add I can think of something like yeah, we did something for Halloween. We added new environments for all the maps, and it's like doing the work, changing the environment went pretty fast. It took like a week for our environment artist to do that, or like our level artist to do that. But then we have to add, there always comes so much more stuff that you don't think about in the start, like okay, so we need a text coming up, and then we have to localize that text. Somebody needs to write that text. We need to send it to get translated in 8 different languages, and then we need to have a voice saying something, and that we need to get the voice actors in, and we have to record that. And like it's just like things just go on top of each other, and like the smallest little thing that you thought, okay, cool, it will take us like an hour to do, it becomes like 10 hours, or like, so everything just blooms into this big thing that players don't realize that, like even adding a button with a text, that will take like 2 days. Not adding the button in the text, but adding the button and then getting the text. Somebody writing a good text that actually makes sense, and then like translating that text, getting it back from the translation. Like it's so nothing goes fast. Like everything takes so much more time than you can imagine. So yeah, that's something that like people don't realize, well, like how much time it takes to make even the mundane things. And also something like our game is moddable. And the modders, they can do stuff really fast. Like they can because they don't have to care if it really works and if it looks good and like if it's translated and all that stuff. So they can do stuff really quick and dirty and do it really fast. But if we want to do the same thing, it takes us like a month or something, like 2 months of work to do it, because we have to do it. We have to test it. We have to make sure that it works, and then it doesn't work, and then we have to fix it and blah blah, all that stuff. So it's interesting how even the easiest, like smallest little tasks can take insane amounts and really snowball into huge sort of enterprises that you have to do. And I totally understand how that's hard for like the consumer to understand, because you don't know this, but it's like it's a fact that it does.
I think just to add to that as well, like the interesting dynamic you generally see is like those things are really easy to do at the start of production when everything's loose, and you're like you're smashing them in as fast as any modder can smash them in, right? But I suppose like looking at Vermintide, I mean, like the game is fully fledged, done. Adding a small thing like it's just like every day you pass in production, it gets harder, and by the end, when it's fully fledged like that, it is a massive undertaking to do even the smallest thing, which is very interesting. It's kind of like you lit this fuse like 3 years ago, and then you wait to see where it kind of shoots.
And if you delay your game, consistently putting your finger on the fuse, stopping it, relighting it. So I think for me, especially when I'm playing a Vermintide or something like that, and there's an appreciation that I have just because, well, I know these guys for a long time, but also you see these crazy, unique things in games that occur, and I think a lot of consumers just don't get the appreciation, which makes sense. Like you always have that question: how much do you worry about how your iPhone was made? You know, sometimes you just go with life, right? But you guys were talking about more information, getting to consumers. And I think I always tell people Game of Sutra is one of the better websites for understanding about development. And then GDC. I keep telling people, man, the GDC Vault, if you guys want to see something that is amazing, the background for Horizon Zero Dawn, one of the most spectacular games I've ever played. Absolutely love that game. They did a background on the technology of that. They did it in a layman term. They did it in a term that, somebody who's just brand new to games could get most of it. And I just wish people would see that, because if I see one more person fucking look at a game and say, it should look as good as God of War, and you're like, God, what? That's not how things work. Like, not at all how things work. And that's why I'm hoping that especially 2018, everybody's appreciation for what they see here, I'm hoping that in 2019 we don't get a rebound, where people are like, well, because it happened with Witcher 3. Every game needed to be Witcher 3. That was just the way it was. And it was uncomfortable for everybody involved who knew anything about games, because it's like, dude, every game's not going to be Witcher 3. It's going to be more like, Gene Rain or some Piranha Bytes game. By the way, I like Piranha Bytes games. But it is a unique time. Do you guys, when you're working on something, do you ever look at a thing that you're creating and go, if we put it... This has been asked multiple times in the Discord too. If we put this in the game, it's going to be expected in every game going forward. Has that ever come up in your development? And then your decision of like, maybe Vermintide's a good place to ask this because you have one and two. Did you ever look at one, think of adding something, and go, "Fuck, if we put this in here"?
No, not really that way. But now looking at Vermintide 2, because like we did Vermintide 1, and then we did 2, and we just expanded on 1. So we had the whole base from 1. We had all that work already done, and then we just took everything and just expanded on it. So it's sort of like World of Warcraft is another good example of this. Like it's been worked on so long that it's this massive big game. So every other MMO coming out after that has to get up to like 13 years of work and features and everything. They have to have all. They have to tick every box. They have to have guilds. They have to have like chat, blah blah blah. These types of chats, and they have to have blah 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 blah. I don't know, everything. So it's the same thing for Vermintide 2. Now we have Vermintide 2, which was built on a game that we've already put like 2 years into, and then we put 1.5 more years into Vermintide 2, and sort of. So now, if we're gonna make a new game. I don't know if we are going to make a new game, but we probably are sometime going to make a new game.
It won't be Escape from Dead Island 2, will it?
No, it won't. Probably won't be Escape from Dead Island 2. Definitely not. But but then you sort of we have to do all that work in the time we have to do one game, sort of. Mm-hmm. So we have to do like we now we've set the bar for how good our games are, and they are sort of Vermintide 2. That's the standard now. Mm-hmm. If we make a game that is like Vermintide 1, it will feel like we've gone down a notch. We have to like so that's a problem.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
We need to have all these features. We have to have these types of like amounts of enemies and weapons or whatever. If we're gonna make a game that is similar to Vermintide 2, at least.
Yeah, because you can't go backwards.
No, exactly.
Players will utterly castigate you.
Yeah,
there's a good real world example of this as well, with like Bungie taking investment to spin up a new IP. It's expensive and risky, you know. So yeah, they have to like double down on that to like really do it. And yeah, I mean, it's a pretty good like well-known thing, I guess, in games and like how people build their IP or like build their thing. Yes, you want to kind of build upwards, not sideways necessarily, because it's like now you've got a game where it's more like you spend 4 years on it instead of 2 years, you know, and then add another 2 years. It's like a 6-year kind of like development cycle if you just keep building on top of them.
Now this is, I want to warn everybody, this is not a negative question. I'm just poking fun at myself and Mike, but I want to ask what these guys feel like. I don't think Mike's ever got anything wrong. I should say myself. So what's it like as a developer? And I've talked a little bit to Victor about, I think it was Vermintide 1 where you guys had a Twitch streamer having a crash because of fraps. Do you remember that story?
That sounds familiar.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's say when you guys release your game and a reviewer gets it wrong, and you can even give us somebody that you know in the industry their story as well. How do you guys handle that? Because I have been, like, we all watch reviews or read other people's reviews or something like that, and it's easy to get something wrong, or it's easy to assume that what you experienced, everybody's going to experience, which is, let's say, an issue with bugs, for example. Somebody's like, well, crashed here, it's going to crash for everybody, I got to report that. Is there anything internally you guys do if somebody gets something wrong? Because I've always wondered what's it like to be like, here's Vermintide 2, and somebody's all, there's no dwarf, and you're all, what the fuck, he's right there in the choice screen. Like, what do you mean there's no dwarf? Has that ever happened, first of all, Victor? And then if it did, what do you guys do?
I don't know, not to that magnitude, but a part of it would be like we haven't done our job right. If you don't know that there's a dwarf in our game, and there's obviously a dwarf,
right?
We're really bad at presenting the dwarf. Like we haven't done our job. If it's not our fault, it's not your fault that you misunderstand our game. Like it can be frustrating for us that but can't you read? Sort of like, is it that hard to read text?
Right.
And stuff like that can be sort of frustrating. You can be like, how are they not understanding this? But if somebody misunderstands something in the game, it's basically our fault. We haven't done our job right. Like we haven't presented it to you. We haven't taught you whatever it is you're missing or stuff like that. So it's our fault, basically. So
yeah.
You can never fault the consumer for getting it wrong. I mean, if you don't understand it, like if you see a movie and you don't understand the movie, it's not your fault that you don't understand the movie. Like it's like
things weren't explained well enough.
Yeah, exactly.
There was recently a streamer that I saw who got like 80 hours into Breath of the Wild, like real far.
I already know where this is going.
Yeah, and
Yeah, I saw that.
she ended up.
She
Yeah,
hadn't found a tutorial. Yeah, that was.
she hadn't gotten it into the tutorial shrine, so she's like looking at, and I'm like, but like I was also like impressed because I was like, wow, you did. Like you were missing basic mechanics and you got as far as you did.
Yeah.
Like that is impressive as hell, having played the game. But like that can happen to anyone. Like you can just miss something. I've definitely gotten like I've beaten a game and then I've been watching like another stream or a video and being like, what? I didn't know you could do that. Like I just missed a mechanic somewhere along the line.
Yeah. Derek, having just released Ashen, has anything like this, even on a small scale, come up where you guys are like, oh shit, maybe we need to handle, or maybe get press out there to talk about a specific thing?
Yeah. Sometimes we get that. And like with multitude of like small things, like so many things. Generally, like our community manager would engage with people and like let them know where it is, just to help them out. My personal like philosophical stand on it is exactly the same as Victor's. It's like if it wasn't there, if it wasn't obvious to people, then we need to like take those notes on board and like figure out how to make it more obvious, because the whole point is that people are doing this for entertainment, right? They're meant to sit down and enjoy the experience, not get like frustrated by these particular things. But and personally, just for myself, like I've heard of like some folks get really like tangled up in like, I don't know, comment sections and stuff, or like where there's somebody who hates it and somebody likes it and whatever. And like I actually look at that in a bit of a different way as well. I mean, I think, and I actually think a lot of game developers look at it this way, which is anybody saying anything is positive. Whether they say it negative or positive, it's like they're showing interest in this thing, and so it doesn't matter. So like it's like more power to them, to be honest. Like they should say what they think about things. Yeah.
You guys are way.
I have an example of how this has impacted our games. Like going from Vermintide 1, watching people play it on Twitch, we saw that people couldn't, they weren't blocking. They weren't using block because we didn't actually have a tutorial in Vermintide 1 because we didn't have time to make one. But we made a tutorial for the console version in Vermintide 1, but it was we had to do it really quickly, so it wasn't perfect in any way. So in Vermintide 2, we put a lot more time into our tutorial and made sure we had a tutorial that forced you couldn't go past if you hadn't blocked, and you couldn't go past if you hadn't dodged and all that stuff. So we knew when they were going into the game, they knew all the basics of the game, which we didn't have in Vermintide 1. So that's something that we really learned, that we need to teach our players more, because we were sort of in Vermintide 1, we were like, it's like every other game. You block by pressing left click or right click. They're gonna figure it out, but some people didn't. We saw them playing, and they were like, "Why aren't they blocking? You should block. Why aren't you blocking?" It's saying there it's like there's text on the screen saying block, and they're not doing it. But yeah, so that informed us for Vermintide 2. We needed to have a better tutorial and a tutorial that forced people into doing all of the actions that we wanted them to know before going to the game. And I think our next game we're gonna put even more work into tutorials, like not have them. And I really hate like boring tutorials, but having good fun tutorials that teach you like how to play the game in a natural way is fantastic. And like it's like if people aren't engaging with one of your systems, it's just because you haven't taught them well enough. So you need to do better. Like
Yeah. How much of that do you guys do? I know some of that's like your community manager like will watch the videos or go into the forums and collect some of that stuff up and bring it back to the dev team. But how much of that do you guys do? Like just sitting there watching people playing streams or YouTube videos of your games?
Honestly, right now, like for the last like month, everybody's second monitor in our studio has been streamers playing Ashen. So, I think that's kind of probably par for the course.
After a while, you have to stop. But when you rush release the game, that's like basically all you do. But and then I browse Reddit like at least every week, sometimes every day. I don't engage that much, but I like read what's going on. But then our community manager, he does like he takes in the whole scope of everything that is going on, like tries to get a more sort of objective look at stuff. Because I like as a dev, you almost only see the pure negative, sort of the really bad stuff, so yeah, and it can also be really, it can be really hard if somebody's written a really like nasty post about something. It can be hard to then go back to work and stuff. So it can be nice to just sort of don't look at that stuff for a while, and then but you do have to do it all the time.
I'm gonna now officially say that the reason for my shit gameplay when I played Vermintide 1 with these guys at GDC was because of not knowing how to block. I'm gonna use that as my excuse. And,
exactly.
and why Liam had to save my ass the entire time.
Yeah.
So I have a question. Takedown wants to know if, and this is for Derek, if you could go back and redo one element of Ashen right now. So just like if you had the resources.
Ooh.
Yeah, here we go. What would that be?
I would add friend invites to Ashen. The real trick with that was because we did passive multiplayer, right? Like the whole thing, it doesn't really work the way like a lot of other games work, where like normally a game is like you either go into a lobby and it puts you all into like one world, right? Ashen, or you join somebody else's world and leave yours behind. Which is like what Dark Souls does. Ashen kind of does this,
Right.
where they go together, and it's just the whole paradigm's like pretty different. And
Is it like Journey?
Yes,
Was
exactly like
Journey in inspiration for you? Yes.
Yes, very much so. And so just like Victor was saying, like doing that at the end of development is just crazy amounts of time and effort, and like even just QAing something like that would be like nightmarish. So that would be the thing that I think we would have had to preload earlier. Yeah.
Funny you mentioned that, because I jump in there. I talked to you on the podcast a couple, maybe 2-3 months prior to the release, and you were talking about how the multiplayer was going to go, and you mentioned something about your multiplayer character is going to look like your multiplayer character even if it's another player. So I spent the first hour of Ashen going, what is wrong with my AI? Like, what is happening with this guy? He's nuts. Like, what? And I was panicking. I was legitimately going like, I have no clue. Do I have a bug? And then I realized it was somebody else. I was all, oh, it's basically another person who's doing that. And then and I'm sure you guys probably mentioned that somewhere, and you had already told me, but it didn't. Once I turned the game on, that info went away, and I was sucked in. And I was like watching the movies at the starting and all this stuff, and trying to do that. And then after that, joining with friends and going, okay, dude, jump, and they jump, and I'd be like, okay, you're in my game, right? Like that kind of unique kind of multiplayer. It is different. I think that it works better now that I know. But yeah, at first I could definitely see somebody being like, what exactly? How do I do this? The filter is like a Nintendo online code, really, friend code. Like that wasn't too hard to figure out. But I would say like turn off AI, and then a little bit later, the AI would be there, and I would think, what the hell? I turned it off, and yeah, it was that other person running around who had gotten the game.
But that can work out. I had a ringer. He was like, or she was
some
much
Dark
better
Souls
than I.
Switch or Twitch player who's just in there.
Right, like I'm like falling around. I'm like just like do, and then like they'd be like way ahead, just like dodging and breaking. I'm like, wow, they're really good. I'm just gonna sit and watch. I'm gonna
pick up the pieces, baby. Be like, thank you very much for that. Victor, for Vermintide, has this ever come up? And is there anything that you would really like if you had the resources right now, to go back?
God,
It's like saying that your kid isn't perfect.
Yeah.
But
the problem is that there's too much of it. I would like to fix. But,
I see. I got you.
What to pick? Oh, it's perfect. It's a perfect game.
We'll just go.
You can't make it
We can go with that.
No, but then there's so many small details like loot system, like how the traits and stuff. I would like to make them more interesting and more varied and stuff like that.
Sure.
But there's a lot of things that we could fix and do differently.
So a big thing for me is level design, verticality, all that stuff. I have to take my hat off for you guys and say the fucking field, the cornfield level, can't remember the name. And you're a dwarf, and that shit's right here.
Yeah.
And you're calling to your friends in a panic. It was some of the most fun I've had this year. Was like going, dude, I can't see any, and I'm leaping. And I'm like, what the fuck's going on? I'm jumping on the you have like I think one or two rocks in there that are hidden.
Yeah.
You get up on a rock and you watch everybody fight, and then you're like, okay, he's over there. You go over there, sprint, and nothing's there at that point. You know, you're using the sound to try to figure it out. But that was such a perfect idea because every person I know would always want to be the dwarf. They'd be like, no, I want to be the dwarf in that level. Like that shit. Because a lot of times in those games, you get the thing where it's like, okay, this guy has to open this door. This guy has to do this. You sort of know, looking at the characters, who's going to do what. And with your levels, there were the times where I felt there was an attention to detail on just physicality. So, for example, Dragon's Dogma, if you make a tall character, they can leap up to places. A short character can't, but a short character can go in a tunnel. Those kind of things fascinate me, and I love the game design around them. And so I just got to say, bravo on that. That level is my favorite level. Like, yeah, it's just, I always joke around. I'm like, all I'm doing is staring at everybody's nuts. I can't see anything. Like, but then of course you give him the crossbow, which is ultimately insanely overpowered. Well, at least for me. Love that weapon. Another question that we got here. Can we talk just for a second? This will be up to you guys, about the dichotomy. This is something that just came out recently. So I don't know if you guys even agree with it, and I would say I somewhat don't. But discuss the dichotomy between Red Dead's open layer and all of the open gameplay versus once you jump in a mission and the fairly linear way in which you complete those missions. We don't even have to talk about Red Dead. Maybe if you guys have a reason why that might be, I've always assumed that was done because of something Todd Howard one time said, which is where they turned on the ambient AI and it went fucking nuts. And it just, he's like, whoa, we got to tone this shit down. And I've always felt that in those big scripted missions, you have to tone down the open world, because if it's still going nuts in all those ways, then any, cool directed shootout you need in a town is going to result in absolute anarchy. But, did you guys notice that? Like, Victor, when you were playing Red Dead, did you notice it? Did it push you back, or did it just feel natural to you?
I didn't really think about it, to be honest. Okay. Not in Red Dead, I don't think. But I haven't done a lot of open world type of games. We tried to with Escape from Dead Island. The first iteration of that game was completely different, and we tried to make, the idea was to make a game where there was multiple missions and there was this island and there was a time, there was like a timeline going on the island. So if you the idea was you meet this character in the start, and if you help him, he moves on, and if you don't help him, if you don't go left or right, somebody will die, and then you will see the results. And everything was it was really, really, really complex, and it was really the idea was to allow players to move through the whole game really sort of naturally, and things would just happen, and that you could approach a problem from different angles, and we never got it to work, and it just didn't work. So I can understand why you want to have control, sort of, because allowing players to have, or letting go of that control creates chaos, and it's really hard to, you never know what's going to happen. I mean, Vermintide is, we let go of all of the control. That's part of the mantra in the game, is that we the level designers, they just set the stage, and then the AI director takes over and creates the game. So every time you run through a level, it might be different, and sometimes it really messes with us, especially in when for new players, it can you can get a really, really harsh first sort of a try, and you get really murdered by the AI, and that can be really bad for the player experience. So sometimes we would really like to be able to have more control over what's going on, to be able to sort of make sure that people get a good first experience, as an example. But we don't do that in Vermintide at all. We always let the AI control what's going on, and sometimes you have to really sort of, you have to realize that we have no control, and just let go of the control, and let the game take over, sort of, and then work on the systems and make sure that the systems work. But sometimes it would be really nice to be able to have more control than we do. And I really understand, in an open world game, if you want something really cool to happen, you have to force players into coming in through this angle to be able to see what's going on. And otherwise, a lot of the really, really cool stuff that you like seeing, you would miss it. So. Okay. I can understand it.
What about you, Derek?
I definitely felt it playing Red Dead. It was probably because I was trying to force the game to play the way that I play. I was trying to Assassin's Creed that game,
Okay.
where I think you sort of felt it a little bit there. Like you think you're doing the right thing, and you'd like run out of bounds and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I think it's almost philosophical. Like if they want those moments that are like sort of like The Last of Us or things like that, like where they are trying to do a very scripted thing, I think you just have to. With Ashen, like you go into like a lot of the world's pretty open. You go into dungeons that are more closed because we wanted players to be like almost locked in together and have to deal with it together. And then you go even further to like the bosses where you're going into this very isolated, like little orchestrated thing, and each of them is like a tighter experience. So I think the tighter the kind of dramatic experience you want to get, the more you have to kind of put walls around it. And I think that's just kind of the nature of it. And I suppose, yeah, like comparing to Vermintide, where it's more of a whole play kind of experience once you get into it, right? Like, I mean, each level that you play in it, it's like it feels like it's all kind of like one long thing. Where, and you guys have obviously like philosophically embraced losing that control.
Yeah.
You can feel it, and it feels good. I mean, for a game that needs replayability, it makes perfect sense as well.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Mike? Have you noticed that in games? Did you notice it in Red Dead? Did you feel like the open world tightened up too much in the linear missions?
Mostly in the idea that you could, like, when you were in the open world, you were able to sort of wander far afield.
Mhm.
Whereas once you're in a mission, like, it's like, no, you need to get over here. Or if you go too far, like accidentally, like you're just doing something and it's like, oh, this person died, or you wandered too far away. Like, that's the stuff that I can understand why they do it, but it does sort of like bother me because you're forced to definitely switch too far at times. Like, I'm like, yeah, I know he went away, but like I and also my other part of that is sometimes the if you don't in Red Dead do the mission exactly how it was intended to be done,
Right.
then you fail. Like, and that does bother me. I understand why, but it does bother me at times. Like, I'm like, give me a little bit more rope, or at least a little bit more ability to sort of solve a situation in a slightly different way.
Spider-Man, the Mary Jane mission in the museum. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Man, first of all, I hate Mary Jane in that game. I've been very clear about it. I love the voice actress, hate that character so much, so I tried to let her die. I was like, just going to see if the terrorists kill her. They didn't. So I was all right, so I got to go and I got to save her. And I started saving her, and those in the, that quick instant ending, some of the stealth missions in Spider-Man in particular, I think are not necessarily brutal. They're a little crunchy in the way they feel a little numbers heavy, almost like this is enemy 1, this is enemy 2, northeast, south, and west. We're going to have an enemy here. You have to go around. You have to knock them all out quietly. Then you have to sneak in, that kind of stuff. I noticed it less in Red Dead than I did, strangely enough, even with all those complaints, than I did in Spider-Man. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I just shot everything. Like I followed the NPCs for a lot of the stories. So, like, if they go into that open, they go, oh, this is a directed part, and you can tell because there's a cutscene, and they're like, stick with me. That's usually what I did. But I can see what you mean. Like, if you want to go around a rock and you can't, and you get that warning, and you're like, son of a bitch. You don't want to see that pop up every time.
But I mean, it only becomes a problem if you try to go outside of what they've intended you to do. So if you're not doing that, you will never notice it. So I didn't even think about it because I guess I follow instructions very well, or I'm very boring.
No, I think what happens is I think Red Dead did a pretty good job, Victor, of visually telling you sort of where to go. Like, I feel like whenever I see their worlds, L.A. Noire, I did a walk in the walk for. I've done a walk in the walk for almost all these games except for Red Dead 2, and I'm always surprised by their landscapes because I'm like, they look like they're not auto-generated. They look like every single thing has been planted by hand, which I don't know how they build it. I'm trying to get an interview so I can talk to them about it because I feel like there's visually, it's pretty informative. And I'm like, I need to go down this road or do this in those particular instances. But I can see people complaining about it. I think overall, that's sort of, at some point, getting pretty nitpicky.
That made me think of a mission, by the way, that I really enjoyed, which was the drinking mission with Lenny. That was amazing.
Was that
was
not
fantastic.
the craziest shit in the world?
It was.
And
I also like how it's open ended, like how you end up, because a friend of mine ended up in the forest, waking up, and I ended up in jail and stuff like that. That was really cool. That it could end up differently.
I didn't know that. I ended up in jail too.
Me too.
Yeah, if you get away at the end,
you can escape in there.
That's the one I got, where you'll get away and then you wake up in the forest with, which by the way, no horse, so you have to walk either back to camp or back to town.
Yeah, but that's exactly what would happen, isn't it? Like you would end up without a horse and I have to walk all the way back.
Yeah, and that first time you whistle and you realize you're just whistling in the empty air, no horse is coming, and you're like, damn it. That mission, though, typical Rockstar, they did the interrogation mission in GTA 4. They have the one mission or cutscene that is sort of goes on, and you're like, whoa. And that mission just, when you're running around and his head is on everybody's body, and you're like listening port. I get motion sickness, so I did have a couple issues with that because it did go on for so long. But they're doing the can 1 second, and it keeps popping around. Your brain's just like, what in the like? How much is this is real? And is he just eat the wrong mushroom or something? Yeah, it's very cool. Mike, were you going to say something? Oh, so when it comes to looking ahead, 2019, you guys are both, I'm sure, working on stuff. Is there anything you are looking forward to outside of your own games for 2019 yet? And if you have no answer, that's fine, because a lot of games moved around. I don't even think I know them.
I can start. I'm really looking forward to playing Anthem. I'm not sure it's gonna be good. I'm sort of, but I'm really interested in how it's gonna end up. I think it's gonna be really interesting. Either how, like, even if it's bad or it's good or whatever. I really want to see how that game ends up, because I've been following it a long time. I'm a old school sort of BioWare fan from back in the day, and I want to see them do this type of game, so it's going to be cool. I'm sort of skeptical. I really didn't like Andromeda at all, and sort of I've lost faith in them a little bit, so we'll have to see. But I'm really looking forward to seeing how it ends up.
Very cool. What about you, Derek?
I honestly don't have any. Like, maybe this is like the problem with next year, though, because like even Anthem, like I'm also excited about that to some degree, but it's not like I don't have like the burning desire right now that I have to play this game, like so many games this year. Like even the ones I haven't played, like I haven't played God of War yet, I haven't played Spider-Man yet, and like I have to play those.
So next year is your 2018, then, is what you're saying?
Yeah, just what it was left, like the things I didn't get to. Yeah, it's tricky. Maybe there's something I'm missing. I feel like I have seen things that I was excited about, but
what about you, Mike? Oh, go for it. Go for it, Derek.
But perhaps I think Ori 2 might be coming out.
Oh,
I'm not
yes,
sure.
it is.
I don't know if they've got a date for that. But yeah, that'll be on the list for sure.
Oh man, I can't wait for that. Mike?
For me, I guess I kind of want to actually see Crackdown 3 finally.
Yeah, me too.
Like actually let it go. It's interesting since I'm reviews editor. I put together my calendar for 2019 because I have to make sure like who's going to get this game and parse everything out. But we don't really know really what the face of 2019 is. Like we know the February, March. Like January, February, March corridor, like Kingdom Hearts 3, Far Cry New Dawn, Crackdown 3, Metro Exodus. But after like March, late March, early April, it's dead. So like we will not find out what that stuff is until probably, like PAX East.
Right.
Or the run up to E3. So like the shape of 2019 is still sort of open-ended, at least for me, because I only have 3 months, really 3 months worth of releases in my calendar, and everything else is just sort of a guess. Like no PlayStation experience. So what does that mean in terms of PlayStation games? Like is PS5 coming? The next Xbox? What about another version of the Switch? Next iteration. Like it's very speculative in terms of the overall year in terms of 2019. So I wouldn't say I don't look forward to it. I just don't really know what it's going to look like.
I'm hoping.
I think Crackdown's a good call, actually. Just as
So
even as a tech demo, I want to see those buildings explode.
Yeah, definitely.
And Mike, maybe he had people at the event, but the last event where they showed it had people playing it. A lot of YouTubers I follow, and a couple of them I actually really sort of gel with in what they think is enjoyable, were actually saying, "Holy shit, this is fun! Like this is so."
Yeah.
It's weird if this turns out to be really good, which, crossing our fingers because I want all games to be good. It would also be nice because, Microsoft, other than Forza, has had some issues, State of Decay, some of their Sea of Thieves with no content at all. So just joking, everybody who gets mad.
Yeah, you were talking earlier about the game sort of setting the standard, and I'm all sort of worried about like Crackdown doesn't necessarily look as good as a Odyssey or a Red Dead, but that's not necessarily what I play Crackdown for. So
no.
But I always wonder how everyone else is going to
react to that.
React to it. So
when it comes to Crackdown, when it comes to the technology, it's cool to hear other developers get excited about that too, because like as Victor said, some things aren't tricks, some things are, a lot of game reviewers or game players don't know which ones are or aren't. But you see these buildings falling down, and you get these ideas, almost like what I said with the dwarf and the grass in the face, where you're like, I can do things to strategically change the environment, which is somewhat rare in games overall, I still think. And so some of the stuff that they've been showing for that looks good. I'm also, I got to say, for me, 2019, PSVR Ace Combat. So PSVR, I've been a big negative. I'm pretty negative on that due to the resolution mostly. But everybody I have seen who's been able to play the PSVR version says they're like Ace Combat VR version should be the game. Like it's that enjoyable. Previews, you never quite know, what warning they were given about what they can say. So I don't know if that's all true or not. But that kind of stuff, I would love. Sony continues to pump money into PSVR like nobody's business, and so I would love to see VR succeed. I'm a big VR fan, so I'm actually looking most forward to that of all things. Like it's such a weird game. Anthem, I want to play, but it's not. It's not the same BioWare. It's the name. It's the name BioWare, and then different people, which means this could be what they should have been making instead of attempting those other ones. Which I think a lot of people forget. They're like, I love Rare. Well, guess what? You're Rare. That doesn't exist anymore. Like literally doesn't exist anymore. It's a different company, different people, mostly. And so I think Anthem could be quite enjoyable. And Destiny didn't really hit with a big smash like people, including the company, had wanted. So, Anthem might be able to come in there and steal a little bit of somebody's dinner, which would be fun. I would love to have another title.
It's going to be interesting to see BioWare's take on the Destiny type of game, like an MMO type of game, and see how they handle story, like and how they the looting, how that's going to work out. That's one part, but also like how do they handle how does BioWare, which is known for story, handle a game like Destiny, which is usually it's really hard to tell a good story in a multiplayer type of game like that, where there's so much stuff going on and you don't have the control over where the player is going and stuff like that. So. It's going to be interesting to see.
Free advice to any developer: don't put your lore out in an offsite website called the Codex. That would start. Sorry, that was a fucking terrible decision. I don't know who came up with that. So we have some questions here from patrons. Do you guys have time? I don't want to hold anybody. Derek, super late.
I got time.
Okay.
I'm good.
Victor, you're good.
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, let's do this. What project was the biggest challenge in your career so far, and how did you manage to overcome that challenge? Now, they say project, but if, let's say it's an issue in a game, I think that would be doable as well.
That's a tough question.
Because they're all probably big challenges that at the time feel massive.
I can say what ours is, I guess, if you want to think about it. This is a little bit behind the scenes, though. I'm not too sure how interesting this is even for people, but it's definitely our biggest challenge we've had. And you would have already conquered this before, Victor. It's like literally an indie studio moving from their first to their second game, and how to orchestrate that without shedding all your stuff. You know, like you release a game, and then you wait for it to recoup, and then you wait for it to make a profit. And like, you know, you got to somehow like pay people for 6 months after your game releases, while at the same time it's that same stuff I was talking about before, where you've built up these company genetics. It's almost like this living organism that like slowly puts on like layers of meat as it grows, and now you're just going to like chop it right down to the ground and try and make another game. Doesn't really work, you know. Was insanely difficult. Probably I would say like, you know, half of my time spent game directing, half of my time is spent orchestrating, like tending their garden and making sure those people are looked after on this like point when we hop between two games.
Right.
Was absolutely crazy, but got through it. And
did you get through it with a lot of alcohol? Is that how you got through it? What was? How did you get through it? A lot of, or are you just a sociopath where you're like, I will fire everybody? No, how do you handle that? Really? I mean,
you know, a lot of it comes from the people who believe in you. I guess we've had a lot of support from folks, you know, in terms of like how we've got the investment that we've needed to like move forward, like keep on growing, keep doing. Like what's eventuated is that like, I mean, the company's stronger than ever now. But yeah, I would honestly say that it literally comes down to the folks who believed in you, and often they're like the folks who believed in us when we even pitched Ashen originally. It's like those same people are the same ones who are like out batting for us, which is just mind-boggling, to be honest. Yeah, and you know, we essentially had to set this up like, you know, we'd have to finalize all the stuff before Ashen even releases. No one even knows if it's going to be a good game. Right. You know, the first time we saw like reviews that were above 8 come out after the game released and like embargoes were lifted, we were just like, I don't believe it. Like, where's the 3s? Where's the 4s? Come on, you know, like, like,
where's the hate? There's got to be hate.
There's got to be. It's just like, you know, as a game developer, you only see the flaws, really. And like, so when you release a game, like, you're just like, how do people like it? You know, like, what's going on? And so you're setting up all of the stuff where you have to get people to believe in the future of the company, which you believe in because you believe in the people you work with. But it's like communicating that to folks and getting them on board with that was really tricky. Yeah.
Very cool. What about you, Victor? You got one?
I think like the game, it was probably our second or third game we made called Krater or Crater. It was a small, really weird RPG game that we did, and it was my first time being a game designer. That was really, really tough, and we had like 9 months to do it, and we were overly ambitious as we always are, and like then trying to rein in all of our crazy ideas into something that we could actually ship and make a game out of was really, really tough to sort of go from. We had like from our Martin, our boss, like he had this idea of a Pokemon type of game where you collected like characters, and I was trying to make a sort of RPG, more classical sort of. I've always loved like Fallout and stuff like that, and so we had all these ideas going into this game, and then trying to take what we, after like 8 months of developing, had, and trying to sort of massage it into something that we could actually release was really, really tough and really, really hard. And like when we released it, I couldn't watch, like I couldn't look at the game for quite a long time because I felt sort of there was so much we wanted to do that we didn't have time to do.
Right.
But then after a while, like after a year or so, you could sort of start looking at it again with more sort of sober eyes and see like it's a pretty cool little strange little indie RPG that we did that sort of has a lot of charm and is pretty. Nowadays I'm really proud of it, and like from like looking at the time and the resources and our sort of knowledge as a studio back then, it's like almost must be like 8 years ago, 6-7 years ago. It's a pretty cool game, and it's pretty fantastic that it actually we were able to release something and it's actually enjoyable and a lot of people liked it. So yeah, that'll probably be it.
Very cool. What about you, Mike? Career challenges?
Career challenges.
Getting enough storage for them shoes back there probably would be your biggest one.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Most of it is just trying to figure out what people want. My general issue is always what people tend to like isn't always either the kind of thing I want to do, or B, the kind of thing that most of my like effort goes to. So like I'll spend a long time. Some of them work out, like I did a World of Warcraft oral history thing.
Oh.
Had to go up to Blizzard, had to talk to a bunch of people. I had to find people who have left Blizzard. And that was, how many words was that? It was a lot. I feel it was like 14,000? No, that sounds a lot. It was a lot. And I put it out there and it worked and it did very well. But sometimes I'll work very hard on like, here's a look into development, or here's a look into this specific developer. And then I'll throw it out there and it won't really get all that many people reading or necessarily connecting with it, or someone else will pick up a bit of it and people will connect with that bit that's been
right.
like that extra news story or that quote that someone else pulled from it. So it's always trying to figure out like, is this, when I'm hip deep in something and it's a shorter compacted version of what you guys as developers have to work with, like I'm hip deep in it, I'm writing it and we're editing it and we're going over the stuff, and I'm like, is this actually going to work? Like, and it's better for me because my livelihood isn't based on each big story I'm putting out actually doing well. But in terms of like, I like to see the stuff that I put the most effort in get the most readership and audience, when sometimes I'll be like, man, I'm feeling dumb today. I'm gonna bust out something in an hour, and then all of a sudden it just takes off.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, what? So yeah, that's probably my biggest challenge, trying to manage that the time that I'm working on something is actually going to pay off.
Gotcha. I don't really have any challenges. It's just all one large one. For me, it's actually usually tech. Strangely enough, the behind the scenes tech to get a video done, make sure your video, like some video isn't losing dropped frames or some fucking thing, and you wasted 2 hours or you didn't catch what you wanted. Now I record every single thing I do all the time when it comes to games. Go ahead, Mike.
That is what I do. I do. I have my Elgato NVIDIA Shadow Play and it helps me in terms of reviews because I can look back and see exactly what I was doing. I can pull screenshots, and I can also tell exactly how long it took me to beat a game.
Yeah.
Because I have the entire footage of everything I played.
Yeah, whenever I'm playing, I'll stop it. If something goofy happens, I'll stop it and name it that. And since I already know that I stopped it right then, I can just scrub to the end in Adobe and that kind of thing. But I would say the tech is impossible. It's a black hole. It's like you can get a better mic, you can get better internet, you can always buy better stuff. And at some point, you're still not going to look like one of those fashion model YouTubers that's selling lipstick. Like at some point, you have to really go, well, I'm not lying. It's like, some people say every game looks like God of War or should look like God of War. Every YouTuber is not going to look as beautiful as one of those million dollar sellers who's like, here's some lipstick, and they've got their Ring camera light and shit. At some point, you just have to step away and be like, I'm going to make a video, and you're going to have to live with my bearded ass face. Mute me, turn the video off, whatever you have to do. But yeah, technology is it's a stone cold bitch at times. Like I've never been so stressed as like a couple weeks ago when a computer died, and you're all, well, that's everything. Like that's I literally can't do anything right now. We have, first of all, a positive. Johnny Plays Live says Vermintide 2 is still my favorite game in that genre, followed closely by Earthfall. I don't know if Victor's going to like that you put Earthfall in that same comment. Even though I love and have a
That's
blast
okay.
with Earthfall, it's not a very good game. But
Yeah.
Vermintide 2, he loves. Yeah, a lot of love for Ashen too. A lot of people are playing Ashen right now, actually, in my Discord, which I wasn't expecting. I thought they'd all be trying to play below and see if I was right about how small that character is. You guys should, by the way. Let's see, what do we have? We got another question. Okay, here's a question that came in through chat. And I think we can cover it without dogging on anybody. From a developer this is from Drum King. He wants to know, from a developer standpoint, how would you guys handle something like Fallout 76?
Oh.
Yeah, whoa. That's the first time I've heard. That's whoa. maybe that's all we need. We could also just go, how would you handle it in the fact of if you were making one, what maybe what you would want in your version of Fallout 76 versus the problems it's having now. Anybody want to give that a crack? If you don't, I understand, because that's a tough nut to.
It's a tough one.
That one sort of feels a bit like it's so hard to know what their constraints were.
Yeah,
internally
exactly.
as well. Because say Blizzard can hold things back and just iterate on them until something good is there and give it the time it needs. But can they do that? So did they have to release it for some reason, even though they could probably see the same issues that everyone else could see?
Mm-hmm.
It's really so difficult to know, and to make a call on what we would do in that situation, we'd need to know so much more background as to what.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Victor, did you have something to add?
No, just that they must have had a pretty hard time since releasing the game. It can't have been fun for the team.
Yeah.
It must have been that they've been trying to fix it every day. And they know what's going on.
Yeah. It's not like one of them's going to wake up today and go, "Wait, what?" I'm sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
Something doesn't like.
And they probably knew as well.
Yeah,
it was most likely not the decision made by the developers. That's all I can say.
Yeah, for sure. Mike, you got anything to add to that? Even though you're not developing.
No, I felt so bad because it felt like everything was going wrong. Not just the game itself.
There's support
issues,
staff
just
leaking
stuff around it,
leaking shit. Yeah.
And I was just every day I was wow, why can't Lord, just let them live for a month so they can work on the game without all of the extra stuff. But yeah, no, that was one of those like you were saying. I never want to go into a game thinking it's bad, and I wouldn't say Fallout 76 is bad. It's just below what I expected. And as I was playing it, I was just I just wish this was better. And it was
Well, that's expectations too. Fallout, whether you loved it or not, Fallout 4 was their best of the Fallout selling of the Fallout games, and then you see 76, which confused people anyway, because I was like, where the fuck is 5? What are you guys doing? The number was weird, the naming was weird, and it felt like the moment they did that, it was courting disaster. It's everything just it's online always, and you just see that thing.
But it would have been way worse if it was called Fallout 5, though.
Oh my God, yes. Oh my God, yes. Can you imagine?
That would have been really bad. Really bad.
There would not be a Bethesda building anymore. It would have just been a crater because somebody would have sent them explosive pancakes. I got the unfortunate story. I was talking to somebody who worked on BioWare's Mass Effect 3, the ending, which I'll be honest, I'm fairly vocal about absolutely hating. And he enlightened me on what it was like working at a place when people hated something that much. And it was pretty fucking sad, because he said that what happens is it's not the one-liners that got him. It was the concentrated effort at reminding him that it wasn't what they wanted. And he said one was somebody sent them cupcakes that spelled out the colors of the choices in Mass Effect, the ending, the 3, and then your ending sucked on cupcakes. Yeah. And I was like, okay, somebody, first of all, bravo, that's a creative person, but put your creativity somewhere else. Send them a text via Twitter, be nice. But yeah, good. I'm glad you guys at least tried to answer that. That's a difficult question, and they're in a place I think almost no company will find themselves in. It's a very unique title, very unique company, and some unique expectations that came around.
Hopefully something good will come out of it. I think it's hopefully they realize that we can't do this again. Like as a company,
Mhm.
like we can't just ship something that isn't working well. So that's all I can say.
Or at the very least, other developers look at it and say this is something.
Yeah, and also
because trust is probably
the hardest thing to
best things, like, because if players trust you, then even the things that you do wrong, they'll be like, oh, they'll fix it, or they intended to do this. But once you lose the trust, then it becomes much harder to do things in the future.
Yeah.
And Bethesda, their next game from Bethesda proper has to rebuild some of that trust in the same way that Anthem has to sort of rebuild some of BioWare's trust.
That's a good point.
Definitely.
Does anybody feel a little bit like Obsidian was really trying to steal their thunder at the Game Awards without Outer Worlds? And then...
Oh my god, I called that our power move. I was like, oh my god, that is such...
It was checkmate.
Power move
or at least check.
At the perfect time.
And it was like little one-liners in it and little moments where you're all, this is all, what the hell is happening right now? It was like a parody video, and but it's real and actually looks fun. I'm very excited for that game. But
and given the trailer, like, they had to have put that, like, given timelines, like, before 76 came out. So they didn't know what was going to happen with 76. They were just making a trailer for their game. But it came at, like, the right time. It was just like, wow.
So the next question, and I did cover this with these gentlemen prior, because this is it's sort of a bigger situation, but it said, I'd be curious to hear your opinion on how it's okay for No Man's Sky to get nominated for the Best Improved Ongoing Game of 2018 after they lied to their consumers and released an initially horrible game, which I can't say it was horrible, but do they think that might set a precedent for other game developers to follow that trend, because in the end, they'll still get an award? Which I think that's from my joke in the review where I said, hey, they got an award even after releasing a game 2 years ago that was shit. But seriously, all jokes aside, I don't even know if okay is the right word, but I guess I could just say, what are your thoughts on something like that? On them getting an award for most improved?
I haven't played it since they improved it, so I can't really say how much they have actually improved it. I played it when it came out. And I think the thing with No Man's Sky is that it was just a really messed up message. It was always the game that they said it would be. It just sounded so much better, and and I think part of the problem is actually media's problem in one way. They media, like gaming media, they saw something that they thought looked really it sounded really fascinating, and then they sort of blew it up. And I think the only problem like they did was not telling you, no, it's not that. It's not that at all. It's like, because if you look at what they said it was, it's pretty much what it was. It just wasn't what they said actually, like in reality, isn't that exciting. Like, it's like, oh, it's an infinite universe with infinite planets. It is, but is it exciting planets? Nah, maybe not.
Right.
So
that's a good point.
But people, when it was sort of being hyped, everybody sort of, this sounds insane. It's infinite possibilities, all these planets, la la la. It's gonna be so cool. You're gonna be able to do this and this. And people's fantasies went away and created this beast that they couldn't live up to. And I think they must have felt like, what the fuck? What are we going to do? We have all this really good hype, which is fantastic. Like, our game is getting all this attention, but they've sort of distorted our message into becoming something that we're really not. And we can't change that because the game is what it is. And so I don't know. I feel really bad for the guys that made No Man's Sky sometimes, just because their message got distorted along the way. And I can't say, I don't know, I didn't follow all of what they actually said. But for me, like their initial trailer at the Game Awards, when I saw that, I felt like, this game is not going to be that much fun. It's going to be cool. It's going to be like a cool little thing, but it's not going to be what the people that reacted to the trailer said it's going to be. I was like, there's like, I remember, I think game trailers were still around at that time, and I think it was game trailers, and I was like listening to their reactions, and they were like, oh, it's gonna be, imagine how cool it's gonna be, you're gonna be doing. I was like, nah, it's not gonna be that cool that you think it's gonna be. And they had seen the same trailer that I saw. It's just like, so I don't know. I feel sort of it is pretty much exactly the game that they said they would make, and what the trailer showed it would make, but people just sort of distorted it into this fantasy version of the game.
Right.
And then they've just sort of built upon it, and what I've heard, it's pretty cool now. It's like a lot of the stuff that you wanted is in there, so why not?
Yeah. Like I talked to Sean Murray the first time they revealed that at E3. Like they brought us to a hotel room and they showed us the build, and a lot of people sort of categorize it as lying, but like talking to him, he believed everything he said. And I forget who else I was talking, but they talk about the fact that in development, like the part of the reason that you guys don't always talk to media or fans in the middle of development is because things change.
Yeah, definitely.
And sometimes there's scope creep. Sometimes you have to pull stuff back. Sometimes a feature that you think is going to work, when it starts getting towards the end, doesn't actually work, and it has to be cut. And I think part of the problem there was that he really did believe in everything he said. And like when you're talking to him face to face, he was very enthusiastic. But I think a lot of that stuff had to, by launch, be scaled back, or it just wasn't as fun. And like I always feel bad for them that things turned out the way they were, but I was glad that they were able to keep working on it. Like it didn't kill the studio.
Yeah, right.
And they were able to turn it around.
Right.
But
I would have to agree. Like it does seem like it's good to incentivize developers to support their games beyond, and if they've gone and like set it right, or even like achieved a vision that, whether they wanted to get there for the initial release, or they want, or it was just something that was kind of like hyped up to be that, and now they've kind of attained what the hype was kind of setting the bar at. That's pretty impressive.
Also, it's most improved, and how much more can you go from a consensus of bad to a consensus of good? If Fallout 76, like 2 years from now, ends up being like totally amazing, then the award is most improved.
It's a strange award to begin with, I would say. Like,
congratulations on releasing shit. Thanks for fixing it.
And then making it good. Yeah, it's a weird. It's a kind of strange.
Yeah, it's not an award like we have, but like if that's the award,
I mean, if we
then
look,
it sounds right,
and it does sound right. And if we look at Rainbow Six, it started out good, just not as lovely as people would want. There were some things missing, and then they've also fixed that. For Honor, Ubisoft has really taken that. Yeah. So I think Ubisoft has shown that it's possible. And I think No Man's Sky has too. I think what happens is a lot of gamers just hold on to the Book of Woe like a fucking dwarf in Warhammer, right? They're always holding on to that, and every fucking thing done wrong they write down. They're like, I will remember that forever. Which I think is fine to a point, so that you don't get burned continually. But the reactions were a little bit like, Hyundai selling a car and the fucking brakes don't work or something. It was not. It was a $60 game. That's in the end all it was. It was a $60 game that didn't meet expectations, and they've improved it. I think overall that award is fine. Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, I wouldn't give that award out because again, it would. Then you'd have to be like, remember this really shit game? It's much better now, and that would be a little uncomfortable to even discuss. But I do think it was an odd one. I think best ongoing game works. I like that award because it also incentivizes, as Derek said, your developer to go, oh, okay, people still want some content here. Let's jump in here and let's deliver it to them. So yeah, good question.
And it's also something that is really happening now. Like every game, most games have post-launch content
or whatever.
You have to sort of nowadays.
Yeah, you always.
It depends on your game, but a lot of games do.
Yeah, like I was saying earlier, I was playing Ghost Recon Wildlands, and I looked up. Oh wow, they're still they just released more content for that.
Dude, they added Predator to that game, Mike.
Oh yeah, I know. Oh,
Predator.
I thought
It's like
I
Hitman 2
thought that
adding
thing.
fucking the exclusive targets and it being Sean Bean the first time. It's magic. Like that's the fucking most perfect idea ever.
Don't remind me about Sean Bean. I screwed up on the exit after killing
Oh.
him, and
So that's a sore subject for you. So yeah, because he disappears, doesn't he? If you don't get
one an elusive target is you get one shot.
One
That's
shot.
it. And
I love that.
I
love
killed him, but on the way out, I like tripped into a guard, and then it just it hurts me so much because it sits there on your little menu like failed until the next elusive target. Now the next elusive target is out, but I'll never be able to kill Sean Bean again and get credit for it.
Well, he's been killed a lot, so I think you're okay. Let's talk a little bit about Hitman 2. Did anybody play that besides Mike and I?
No, sadly no.
Well,
I can't do stealth games. I don't have the patience to do stealth
oh,
games.
gotcha. I was just gonna say I think that because it's a sequel, it's not getting recognized the way it should. It is a brilliant game, but one of the best parts of that game, we talked about this when you have to funnel a person through so they see what you want them to see in certain missions, that kind of thing. But Hitman does the opposite, and it's very reward when you beat a level is to say, now here's a completely new starting point somewhere else as a chef.
Yeah.
And there's tons of them. Like, I don't know about you, Mike, but it's like when you beat one, it's just like ding, ding, ding. It's just giving you all these new unlocks and new places. And
New starting points.
And that one time you get on a dolphin and ride a dolphin as a goof exit, and you're like, what's happening? Why is Hitman on a dolphin right now? The one time he dresses up like the mascot and flies away. And their sense of flexibility is good. And so I was just wondering, like, Mike, did you notice that as well? Or it sounds like you were pretty positive.
It was my number one game of the year. No, I love Hitman. And it's you can't get the Hitman experience from a game other than Hitman.
Right.
Like there is no other game like it. And that is part of why I loved it so much. It was just so deep, and you can jump back into level, and you're always finding new things. And it's the kind of game that really rewards replaying. And that was another one I was always like worried when it was coming out. I was like, man, I think this is fantastic, but it's also not the kind of game that I see sort of mass market like penetration for. So like I was constantly, when WB picked them up, I was like hopefully WB realizes like the addressable audience for Hitman.
Yeah.
And plans accordingly, because I love it and I want more, but like Hitman is never going to be an Uncharted, a God of War, thing like that. That's not the game that you're gonna like go out and I mean, I've worked at GameStop back in the day. That's not the kind of game that's like, oh, you just bought a PS4, here's Hitman 2.
Yeah,
No.
sure.
So like I love it, but I realize also how many people are going to enjoy a thing like that. And I'm always thinking about that, like in my head, like as I'm playing a game, I'm like, how will other people sort of, because I don't like to see other people's opinions before I've finished my review. And once I finish the review, then I generally don't tend to read a ton of other reviews. I just do a few that I from people that I trust, or I'll go into an era and see what people are talking about.
I'm usually just told I'm wrong. You get that?
Yeah. I don't tend to. There's been less of that actually, unless you are. That's the other one. That going back way back. You said, what's the biggest career? Always worrying about for every review release being the odd man out.
I don't worry at all,
because
you can't.
My review is always my real opinion, and I never know what other reviewers are going to say until the embargo goes up. And the worst thing that can happen in terms of blowback and people coming after you is being the one review that is against
The grain.
whatever the consensus ends up being, even though you're usually not the only one, but there's always one review that is picked as the one. So even if there are 20 reviews and everyone's like, oh, it's a 9 out of 10 game, and maybe there are 4 or 5 reviews that are like, nah, it's like a 3 out of 10. One of those 4 or 5 reviews will be picked, and that will be the one that everyone goes after. And that's like a weeks. It was Horizon Zero Dawn, and Katie just didn't
resonate with her.
Work with her. I liked it, but I wasn't the reviewer. And she gave it, I think, a 2.5 out of 5.
Dude, damn, son. Really?
And we had
Oh.
a sustained, like, people will still bring that up. Only to Katie. So, like, we had a sustained, like, 2 weeks of just nonsense and trash heading in Katie's direction. And it's just, like, everyone's like, you do it for clickbait. It's not worth it. It's never worth it.
Oh, yeah.
If that was a thing we were doing on purpose, just to, like, it's never worth it.
I don't know if it happens to you, but what I always get is, thanks for being independent. You cover small games, big games. You think things differently than everybody else. And then that very same person the next day will be like, your review does not agree with Metacritic. And I'll be like, the fuck? Yesterday it was fine. That was but that's because it agreed with whatever they said. Today doesn't. Yeah. And it's just, you have to deal with that kind of stuff. Do you guys still have a little bit of time? Because I know.
Sure.
Okay. All right. So here we go. I don't want to say personal or game of the year until I'll let Mike go last because he's given his. I saw you did, right? Is that the one I saw?
Yeah.
That came. Okay. So you guys don't have to if you don't want to, and I know Derek didn't get a chance to play a ton. It sounds to me like Victor, you're thinking best game of the year, Spider-Man.
No, I think God of War. Actually.
God of War.
But it always becomes distorted the longer the year goes, because like when God of War came out, it was definitely God of War, and then Spider-Man, and then I can't really remember God of War. But I think looking back, I think God of War definitely. I would say I've said to go.
For you, what's a game of the year, if that makes sense? Like for you, is it because it transcends that time and you still are even thinking about it, and you knew you had a good time originally, or I mean, what makes that?
I just enjoyed everything of that game, like. From beginning to end, every side quest, everything I did, everything, I had a lot of fun with it, and I thought it was executed perfectly, and it was just, and it also sort of, it's like a tentpole game. It's like this blockbuster major thing, and I think that plays into it as well. Like it's like seeing maybe Star Wars is a bad analogy now, but sort of like it's like the game of the year. It was like, it was. Yeah.
I got you. What about you, Derek? I know you said you haven't got a chance to play as many. Is there anything?
I'd probably give it to Red Dead, and that's actually because like the game frustrated me so greatly, and like there were times when I just hated it, but at the same time, like it was so monumental that like you just have to play it. Like it's just too amazing. I kind of like I want to give it to like Forza. I want to give it to Assassin's Creed, but yeah, I just have to like just knowing what it is, how big it is, how detailed everything was, how much it surprises you all the time, and I mean that's also a full like I literally haven't finished it now yet because of just like being frustrated and being like I'm gonna step away from this for a little bit.
I haven't finished it either. It's too big.
Yeah.
Well, that's partly it. But absolutely amazing.
Mike, so why did you give it to what you gave it to?
Mine was Hitman 2. You can actually, cheap Samuel's plug, find it on usgamer.net. We put all of our personal top 10s up. Mine is currently, I think, the top of the front page. And I actually did top 20 because I play so many games throughout the year that I wanted to highlight.
Is this the one with BattleTech at the top?
BattleTech is actually number 10 for me.
Okay, I have top 20 games of the year. Is that the one because I'm going to post it in our chat.
Dude, if you go to the site, top 20 games is all of our is the site list, but then we have personal lists as
there it
well
is.
because a lot of people. Yep, and it's just right there. You'll see the Hitman Santa costume, and yeah. So Hitman 2, for the reasons stated before, was my number one, but there was a lot of good games this year. I also jammed with Dead Cells. I brought up Overcooked 2, BattleTech. It was a good year from a bunch of different directions for me. And game of the year for me is what is that one experience that I just keep coming back to? And in between everything else, in between review games, what is the one game I keep coming back to?
Okay.
And for me, it was Hitman 2.
Okay. I have not finished mine because we're not at the end of the year, damn it. And I'm a jackass about this. So I'm waiting until the first before I do that one. But I will say, indie game of the year, Pool Panic. If you haven't checked out Pool Panic, these guys need to pay me some kind of dividend because I've been pushing everybody to them. But seriously, Pool Panic, if you get a chance, amazing indie game. A little bit of a control issue when it first got released, been patched up. Never laughed at a game other than Spin Tires, but that's probably just my mental attitude with that game. I've never laughed so hard at a game in my life. I mean, Pool Panic, people legitimately in the YouTube comments were like, is Karak high? What I've never heard him laugh consistently for longer than 5 minutes, but the game is just hilarious. That stuck with me. But yeah, we've got a lot of big games, and there's smaller games that have come out. There's Ashen, I got to finish that in the next 2 days. There's Below, which I don't have to finish because that's not in the list. It's not. There's no chance of that winning just because of the viewpoint. But Forza 4, Odyssey. It's crazy that all these games, racing games. I see Mike's got Forza 4 even in his headline here. So where'd you put Forza 4? Did you give it an honorary, Mike?
Forza 4 was my number 2.
Number 2.
So my top 5 was Hitman, Forza 4, Spider-Man, Odyssey, God of War.
I will say that God of War has a high chance to win for me, and this is because I'm such a big fan of voice, and I think Chris Judge, fucking nailed it. And their writer, I always add writer because I feel bad because they have to have a good vocal, director. They have to, but Chris Judge's performance is it's incredible.
My performance was good. I agree.
Yeah, I did for a second see your name, but especially on a Kratos type of game character where he doesn't talk a lot. There's a scene in that where he's worried about his child, and it's tense not because anything's said. There's just breath. That's it. So Kratos, especially in God of War, he's never really stressing himself. Kratos is like, dude, I've killed gods. Who the fuck are you? And he's just killing everybody. And then when this thing happens, you finally, for the first time, really, I feel, get the stress of it. And it's just breath. It's just him ragged breathing, nervous about his kid. And you're like, I mean, I was just enraptured at that moment. I was like, oh my God, what is happening? It was just him breathing, which probably creeped my wife out. But regardless, I think that is definitely vocal performance of the year. Does anybody have any music or vocal performances that they were Dr. Octavius? Anybody else really liked him from Spider-Man?
Yeah, he was really good.
Yeah, no, he was good. And music, probably Octopath Traveler, which it's not on my top 20, but the soundtrack is fantastic.
Yeah, that's what I hear. I have not got a chance to check that out. It's been brought up so often. What is it? Is it BitTune kind of stuff? Is it synth? Is it what type of music?
Yeah, it's
all that.
Not like super BitTune, but it still tries to do that that almost 16-bit feel, but it is orchestral. It's all actual music, and it's very good. It's like a great soundtrack, which is weird. Great soundtrack for me is always, I noticed the soundtrack, because I feel really bad for composers, and I apologize whenever I interview a composer. It's like I don't hear most of the stuff. Like Nadia at our site loves soundtrack. She hears them. She cares. Most of the time, the soundtrack, I'm sorry, guys. It's just
Nadia needs to come on the next. Nadia needs to come on the next podcast. Replace Mike.
That's the thing with all sound, I think, in games. Like if the sound is good, you don't think about the sound. Like if the sound is really, really good, you don't even think about it. It's when it's bad you think about it.
Yeah, and like God of War, like I didn't notice most of the soundtrack except for the one moment that I'll leave out of spoilers, but there is such a build up and the soundtrack sort of brings back a little bit of the old theme and it's just like, oh wow, this is real good. But for the most part, like I don't hear most soundtracks.
All right, everybody. Mike is officially saying composers do not matter. Make sure to tweet that out. Just joking. What about you, Derek? Music? I'm assuming Red Dead.
Oh yeah, Red Dead's music was crazy. Also, I actually liked Odyssey's music as well.
Me too.
It's probably just because of how it fits into the theme. You know, the whole like just making you feel like you're in the place. Yeah, and I agree with what Victor was saying. Like, you know, good music, and like you almost don't notice it because it fits so well. But I think that even extends to everything. Like, the perfect game is probably something. You know, it's kind of like how really competitive gamers have honed their skills so far that they just have a pure experience when they're playing it. They don't have to think about what to click or what to do. And when you play like a more experiential game where you're doing like story and stuff, you know, if you could make every element be something that you don't even realize is sort of happening and you're just experiencing this thing, I guess that's what everybody aims for. So maybe the composers that you haven't noticed are the best.
The best. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Somebody
that's
brought up
definitely
Near Automata as being one of the best soundtracks in their life, and I would have to agree with that as well, even though it wasn't this year. That soundtrack is just it's amazing. See, I don't know, man. I listen, but you guys don't turn you guys don't turn it down while you're playing, though, right?
No,
Okay.
never.
All right.
I pump it up.
Go ahead. What were you gonna say, Victor?
But I think Spider-Man did a really good job at doing the like sort of
Movies.
comic book movie
Yeah.
soundtrack. It felt just like an Avengers movie. Like they really hit those tones, and you really felt like a superhero. So I think that was really. I mean, it wasn't sort of stand out in a way that it was different or anything, but it just hit the exact right beats that it should. Like.
And when you put your boxers on, well, you've got them on. That's sort of creepy. But you got your boxers on, you leap out that window, and the crescendo comes up, and you're just, I mean, hairs on the back of your neck. You're like, oh, I'm Spider-Man right now. Like, that shit is nailed. They did such a good job. And I think it is easy to forget over time on music, especially though. Like Odyssey, I heard a lot of people say, I don't remember much of the music in Odyssey, but it was more orchestral and more a little bit laid back. But I also thought that was amazing. We have another question here. What element, when you guys are deciding making games, and I know, you know, this is Derek's first major title, but what element of a game comes first in your creative process? The narrative of it, like the story you want to tell, or a particular gameplay hook? And you can even talk about just the ones you recently made. Like how did Ashen start? Because I talked to you about Ashen 4 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was 4 years ago. Do you remember how it started?
It's kind of like two things in unison, to be honest. It's kind of like your creative mind and then your analytical mind kind of like come together at the same time. But where like your analytical mind's almost going like, where's the gap in the market? Like, what is there? Like, what elements should we be combining, and this will work as like an overall thing?
Right.
The creative mind side of it is more like actually it probably relates to like how I was saying like with the composers, like something that's such a pure experience. It's like purely experiential. Like, what is this like one moment you want to craft? And like you try and imagine that one thing that's this like core of a game. This, like whether it's a character doing something or whatever it is, but like everything kind of slowly grows out from that seed. I think it was Hitchcock who said like movies are pretty easy to make. You just get like a whole bunch of really good moments, and you kind of string them together, and that's it, you know. And so you're getting your like key moment, your like seed moment, I suppose, is like the thing that like solidifies the creative. And then there's the other side, which I think it's important to think of the I guess it's what you guys were talking about earlier. It's like, where is the games industry going to be in like 3 to 5 years when we release this thing? What environment is it going to be released into, and like how's that all going to work out? You know, whereas I think all of the when you get down to actual gameplay iteration, all that kind of stuff, like it follows naturally after those things, and that's kind of the craft more so than the initial inspiration.
I do have to also give you guys a huge kudo. When you came on, I'm sorry, what was the other gentleman's name?
Leighton.
Leighton, yeah, tell him hi, by the way. So you guys show up,
Yeah.
and you're talking about the game, and I'm telling you right now, I turned on Ashen, and that is exactly what I expected it to look like. And I don't think that's ever. I mean, this was before you even had GIFs, or GIFs, however you want to pronounce it. Like this was back in the day, and I remember you talking about it and talking about all these things, and then finally turning it on and going like, "Crap, that's exactly." Like you were talking about the open way in which you can move, like the way you handle the open world versus more closed, like maybe Dark Souls. And it was really cool to see something that had been talked about that long ago actually roll out and end up like noticeably being there and being so well done. So yeah, very, very awesome that you guys got to do that. What about you, Victor?
We usually nail down some core pillars of what we want to do. So it's basically so if you take Vermintide, it was like cooperative, sense of progression. We wanted a strong Warhammer feeling, and then what was the last one? Just like a great melee combat.
Oh, okay.
So that's where we started out. But I think having a setting is really good. Like that, you should try to get that pretty early on, because that is a really good way of. Because one of the hardest things with making games is that there's all these different people that need to work together, and they need to really work together. And there's different disciplines, and like programming, sound, art, level design, animation. Everybody has to work together. So having a setting that is really that they can sort of latch onto is really good. So knowing where it's going to be set, or like having a reference game or some reference movie or reference something that they can sort of latch onto and know that, okay, this is the feeling we're going after. That is really good. But also having those, having core pillars of to bounce ideas against. So is this Warhammer? No. Okay, then it goes away. Or is this gonna enforce cooperation? No, it's not. It's gonna so then it goes away. It does. So yeah, that's a good idea. We're gonna keep that, because there's millions of ideas flowing around when you're making a game. So being able to have some sort of somewhere to sort of see if it's gonna be adding to the idea, and then also making a game takes a really long time, so it's really easy to lose track of where you started out. So it's really important to go back to what was the initial idea, what were we trying to do all the time. So that's usually where we start out.
Very cool.
There's a really interesting thing that I've found to do with that, where the things you came up with, say 3 years ago, or however long it is ago, it's almost like a different person came up with them by the time you get to the end of it. And we have this thing, it's a very common thing, I mean, for all game developers, but you see it really clearly in junior concept artists, because and these are the guys who come up with the 2D drawings that we make everything from. Often they'll come in and the more junior they are, the more they'll bring their own personal style in, and they have to learn how to work to the project, not work to their own personal style, because they start to kind of diminish the strength of the project. And it's honestly the pillars do the same thing for you. Where by the end of Ashen, I'm people I've sort of explained to people how I'm no longer actually using my own personal taste or inspiration from what I found outside that day. By the last year of the game, you're using your pillars. You're sticking to those things to make a strong cohesive game. Yeah.
Very cool. Very last question, and then we'll start talking a little bit about one more thing I want to talk to you guys about. How much of an effect does good or bad or bland reviews have on game sales for developers? Now, this is not saying yours. It's just saying even stories you've heard. No names need to be given. Do you see that those make a massive effect? Or do we see a split between the consumer that's knowledgeable and goes to a TB website, Mike's website, what have you, versus the consumer who maybe is just watching, reading Maxim magazine, and there's some ad in there for Call of Duty? Have you guys?
I think it depends on the game.
Okay.
Some games are really vulnerable, and I think usually probably indie games are really vulnerable, smaller games that don't have a marketing power of overcoming bad reputation. It's really like Vermintide is really vulnerable to that type of. If we get bad. Now we got really good reviews, so that wasn't a problem. But like if you get bad reviews, it's really hard. But like a Call of Duty could probably live with really bad reviews and sell really well as well. Anyway, so it really depends on the project. I think for smaller games, I think it's really important. And it doesn't have to be reviews. It could also be like general sort of the general opinion, the public's opinion, like the Reddit or Steam forums or whatever, like Twitter, or it doesn't have to be reviews. But like if you got a reputation of being a bad game, then it's really tough for a small developer to sort of overcome that and telling people like, no, it's good, we promise. Like, but I think like a huge game can probably live through that. Like the you see like huge IPs, like a Harry Potter game or something, would probably sell really well, even though it gets really bad reviews.
Right.
Probably.
What about you, Derek? Same?
Yeah, I agree with that. For my understanding of it, and like, this is the first big game that I've kind of been at the helm of, so seeing this from different angles now. But I would say that it's essentially like your reviews are almost like how you speak to your core audience, right? And for like indie games, for smaller games, that's the whole audience, and so it's so important. But then, I mean, other bigger games, I mean, like the shotgun approach of like a massive marketing campaign pulls in people who don't necessarily need to relate to core gameplay, or aren't like, they're not like in the movies what you'd have is like people who like art house movies. It's like people who are turning up to the cinema on a date, looking at what's on the list and going, go for that one. It's got Tom Cruise in it,
Exactly.
and so it's so different. Yeah, certainly for like what games calls indie and film calls art house. Say reviews are huge.
Okay. Okay, gotcha. That's very interesting.
And like Steam reviews are really important. Like for us at least, like you need to have a mostly positive or positive review on Steam. If you don't, you're not going to sell very well.
Have you ever noticed that like you'll get a reviewer on Steam who's like, Joe Bob number 76, and the fucker's got 10,000 hours in a game and says game's okay, and you're all,
yeah,
what the fuck were you doing for 10,000 hours, man? Like, and I'm not lying. There's a lot of those. Yeah, you'll be like,
we have a lot of those.
Oh, do you? Okay, so I haven't looked at. I'm a firm believer in Steam reviews need to be nuked.
Yeah, but we have a lot of people that have played. Like, I played 1,000 hours of this game. Don't buy it. Like, why did you put 1 year of your life into this game and then say that people should not buy it?
Oh my god!
So yeah.
I mean, if they gave a reason and said these guys dropped support, which we have seen in titles before, like that, servers are down or what have you, that makes total sense. But yeah, some like yours where it's still going and you're sort of like, dude, seriously, man, get out sometime, go outside, maybe go on a date or something. So it's time to pimp anything anybody's working on as we wrap this up. We'll start with Mike. You got anything that you're doing video wise, article wise, podcast wise? We'll get you back on this podcast. I know that.
All of the stuff that I am doing is I can't talk about.
Oh,
yet,
Mike!
But soon.
Come on, drop some. Come on.
It's all going to
Drop
be middle of January. At the very least, I can say I'm doing a God of War postmortem. That is going to be as comprehensive as I can make it, with the people I've been able to talk to.
Okay, cool.
So that'll be mid-January. And then if anyone's going, I'll be at PAX South on 2 panels. One about superhero games, like which superheroes deserve games now that it looks like developers are starting to get superhero games down. And then the other is a deep dive into Spider-Man, because I really enjoy Spider-Man, and I'd like to talk about it on a stage.
With panels, do you frequently get asked, or do you just say, "Hey, I'm going to PAX, and then I'd like to take a spot"?
So we changed this year. We got acquired by ReedPop, who runs PAX.
Oh,
and so they were like, "You should come."
Very cool.
To the thing and do more. So that's like, before I would be asked and I'd go on someone else's panel. Now I am pitching my own panels into that big scrum of panels that everyone puts into packs, and then seeing which ones, if any, get approved.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So
yeah, I've always wondered about how that works, because I'll occasionally get to like top 10 worst YouTubers panel. You want to come?
Yeah. There's an actual panel submission thing, and then there's a deadline, and then I guess we don't actually talk with any of those people. We're still under the same rules as any other panelists, so we just sort of, they go and decide, oh, this is Markiplier, or this is a developer panel, or this is such and such famous YouTuber, or this is just a good topic, and then they sort out which rooms they go in and whatever. So those were the 2 panels of the 5 I submitted that they were like, yeah, those are good enough. So
very cool. Well, congratulations. I hope you guys will record them, right, so people can watch them.
I don't know. Like I said, this is relatively like doing actual panels that aren't me just joining on someone else's panel. At which point I'm like, whatever. Like,
yeah,
it's
take
not
care
my
of
panel,
it. Right?
Yeah, this is fine. Now it's my panel, so I'm like, I don't know. That's a very good question.
A lot of people's confidence dropped dramatically as Mike talked. I'm just joking. All right.
Don't do that.
I'm just joking. What do you got, Victor? Anything you guys are working on right now that you want to talk about openly? You don't? I understand.
I don't think I can. Trying to think if there's something. No, there's nothing I don't think there's anything I really can plug. You should go buy Ashen. That's what I'm saying.
There you go.
It's a good game.
There you go.
If you like Journey, you like what's it called? Not Dead Space.
Dead Souls. Dark Souls.
Dark Souls. Buy Ashen.
I half expected like PR to like come out of the closet behind you, just like
I was gonna make a joke about just nothing but a black screen with a V3. I should and put it there just for time. Oh man,
sadly no.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I'd get myself. Whoa, we just lost Mike for a second. What about you, Derek?
You could go buy our latest DLC, Back to Uber Strikers.
There you go.
Fantastic.
There you go.
Go buy it. Yeah.
What do you got, Derek, that you can talk about?
There also is not a huge amount. We've just shipped, and everything else we have is kind of under such heavy NDA.
Okay.
I would just be whipped.
Let's do it then,
but it's,
because we won't have to pay that penalty. You will. Go. Tell us. Leak. I'm just joking.
No, I mean, honestly, we'd love to. It's just, there isn't a whole lot I can talk about at the moment. Yeah.
All right, that's fine. Last thing, I know Victor likes to cook. This is something that we talk about at the end of every podcast. Like, what is somebody's hobby that they really like to do outside of games? We don't want it to be connected to games at all. So, Victor, I'm assuming you're still doing that. You haven't burned down a kitchen anywhere. That's still your favorite thing.
I still really like cooking. Today, actually, right after this, I'm gonna go do something else. That one of my other biggest passions is music. So I'm gonna go meet up a bunch of friends and drink some wine and listen to music.
Gotcha.
We call it the music night. So we're gonna do that tonight.
That's what a lot of people who drink themselves to death call it. The music night.
Exactly.
That's very cool. What about you, Derek? Anything that you like to do outside of gaming?
Oh man, I do live animals count? I guess they do. We just got a new puppy, so she's like, she's a handful. She's good though. They keep you on your toes,
and they love you regardless.
Is she trained yet, or is she still in the early like pee in the house phase?
She's so worse than pee in the house. Even she just like, how much am I allowed to swear on this?
Dude, I've dropped so many F-bombs. I'm sure you're fine.
Okay. Well, no, she like just shat all over the other dog's bed the other day. It was like wow. It was like she had a butter knife,
Oh,
just went for it. But I don't like, it's not. She doesn't mean it.
Yeah,
She doesn't
exactly.
need
It's all love. It's all love. Except for that dog. She was like, mine. And
Yeah.
marked
Oh,
it
yeah.
for the other dog. Myself, what the fuck? B movies still. That's my main thing. I was looking behind me for the pictures, but like we just watched Flash Gordon last Saturday. We had
I
a
was
bunch of
about to
people.
say, I noticed that Ming the Merciless picture there, and I was like, is that like just a personal thing?
And of course,
Yeah.
Victor saw that I had that as my avatar for Big Trouble in Little China, Lopan. But
That's the best movie
My
ever
God,
made.
that's my favorite movie ever.
dude, look at that, man. Woo. Signed by the actor.
Really?
Yeah. B movies to me are probably one of the most incredible things to enjoy because you know their shit. Even you know, like they're okay with it. Many times they're okay with it. John Carpenter for sure is okay with it, and they go out there and you just get some fun times with friends. So we have a huge group in the Discord who sit and just do voice chat. And there'll be like 20 people, and they're watching Big Trouble in Little China, just making jokes. And B movies are my favorite thing in the world. What were you gonna say, Mike?
You should go watch Venom if you haven't already.
I haven't yet. Wait,
yeah,
as a B movie?
It's oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay, that's. I was not expecting that.
It is not a good movie, but it has a wonderful, wonderful performance by Tom Hardy. I assume they were like, you're the star. We don't have enough of a budget to argue with you, and he just goes for it.
Is he like Nick Cage it kind of thing, where he's just like,
yes,
oh really?
Yes.
Oh, I'm into this shit. Okay.
Oh
Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
it is an amazing film for Tom Hardy's performance.
Oh well, I'll go check it out. I just finally checked out Sharknado for the first time ever.
Oh my God!
And we watched that in B movie, and I haven't laughed that hard in a long time. Like, and I love that they get some serious actors to be in there, even if they're just killed by a shark in the tornado. But those kind of movies, John Carpenter, I have a special fondness for pretty much everything he does. He's also a huge gamer. We're trying to get him on the podcast. Actually, that dude is a big time gamer. Like matter of fact, he was one of the few people I saw who was like a star. Say, I sort of like Fallout 76. I was like, all right, John, we need to talk. No, I'm just joking. Anyway, I want to thank these guys for coming on. This has been an absolute blast. Trying to keep it positive at the end of 2018, and I think we did a pretty damn good job overall. There's a crazy amount of stuff. I hope you guys got some information from these gentlemen, and I hope you go out and buy their games and read Mike's website. Excellent done reviews. Even if we agree on pretty much everything. I'm trying to think of one we've disagreed on that I can blame you for. Nothing.
And even if you could, my opinions are correct.
Exactly. Anyway, thank you everybody for watching. I absolutely appreciate it. Thanks again to these guys. Peace out and enjoy the rest of your weekend.